Harwich Conservation Commission to order for April 20th, 2022. Once again, it's a hybrid meeting. We have people that can dial in remotely and also people here in person. So welcome everyone tonight. We have a fairly full agenda this evening, and I appreciate everyone starting early with what we have to go through this evening. The first item we have on the agenda is a public hearing on 374 Main Street, and this is an area that's currently leased for cranberry bogs, and there's a discussion about entering into a municipal agreement with the town and the Cape Cod Regional Tech School to use it in a broader fashion. Which, Amy, do you want to start this off, please?
Sure. So Superintendent Bob Sanborn from the Tech apologizes he can't make it. He would like to come to your May 4th meeting, so we'll have another public hearing the night then. And I did let the current lessee, Mr. Kukunis, know that we were having this meeting as well if he wanted to participate. So the address is 374 Main Street. It's a plus or minus 33 acre property that abuts Flax Pond. And currently it's actually agricultural use is what's permitted on the property. It's cranberries. He is allowed to do some livestock as well as, I believe, a little bit of forestry and other agricultural activities. Mainly what's happened out there over the years is cranberries with some livestock. So as the lease is coming to an end, this coming November, 1 year until this November, the land's under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission for the purposes of conservation and agriculture. So the commission needs to make a decision about what we want to do with that property once the lease ends. The options as I see it are to release the property for agricultural purposes to the general, put that back out to the general public and see what you get, or to consider something like an intermunicipal agreement, which is what is being talked about tonight, with an entity such as Cape Cod Tech, who their desire is to become the first agricultural technical school on Cape Cod. And what you have in front of you tonight is really just for talking purposes. I'd love to get your feedback so I can bring it back to Bob Sanborn with your questions, what you'd like some more clarification on. That way we can have a really productive discussion on May 4th. So, go ahead.
The purpose tonight is not necessarily to comment on the draft intermunicipal agreement, but to discuss what I'd like to see as far as activities on the site.
Agriculture is a big, broad topic. So I think the way that the property was sold to the town in a broad scope. So I think the commission would have to entertain any type of agriculture that either a new lessee or the tech would propose, but we would want clarification on what that exactly would be, you know, from either a proposal or I've asked for an outline of what they gave the State Department of Education when they had to apply to become an agricultural school to see what was in there.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, there's kind of two parts. There's what does the town want to do with the land? Or the commission want to do with the land? And if you choose to do an intermunicipal agreement, how can we make things a little clearer in it? So the commission, the town, the tech, if they're the recipient, is clear on what is allowed and what's not on the property.
All right, good. Thank you. And there's no one here from either the tech and I know Leo Kukunis is not here tonight. So I assume this is on us. Yeah. All right, Wayne, you want to start off?
Yeah, seeing how we finally have something in writing that we can study and find out what the school is proposing to do, I think we should postpone this discussion until the May 4th and give us a chance to put this proposal over, and then we'll have some questions and whatnot on May 4th. I mean, and also, there's nothing in here that I've seen so far about the building use. I don't know what they're planning on doing with that.
conversations, but I would prefer to hear it, that was several months ago. I'd prefer to hear it from Superintendent
Yeah,
Sanborn.
exactly, and he's not, unfortunately can't be here, so I think we should postpone it.
Just to let the commission know, this draft was just a basic boilerplate draft prepared by Kopelman and Page, our
Yeah.
counsel, to get the conversation started.
Okay, good. We'll study it and, we'll
Some of the
have a
terms are not directly related to conservation. It's gonna be more Board of Selectmen. But I think, what they would get to do on the property is under conservation.
We can put this on the next agenda as well, but I would
Yes.
like to hear if anyone has
Yeah.
comments on it, to give it some thought. To start this off, if we could.
Yeah, I'd love to have a few if there's questions that I can ask, so Bob Sanborn can be better prepared for next, month's meeting. That would be helpful.
Yep. Ellen, do you have any thoughts, comments on this?
I'll wait till May 4th.
All right. John?
Well, I don't have any comments specifically or questions about the agricultural uses. I will leave that to the experts on the commission. And I don't, a lot of what's the document is technical legal stuff, which I'm also totally unqualified to comment or question. Perhaps others on the panel who can question that. I have one question, which is in my review of the document, I didn't see any mention of public access, and looking back at the, Leo Kukunas's original proposal to the town, we mentioned public access and somehow enabling public access without compromising or interfering with his agricultural activities seemed to be an important thing to him. I don't know at the time whether that was just coming from him or there was input from the town suggesting that that was an important thing, but I think it's an important thing for us to discuss in this context as well. And probably similar issues apply public access. That is, if they're going to be doing agricultural activities, there are certainly things that the public shouldn't interfere with. So I think it's something that should be spelled out pretty clearly in whatever agreement is made, assuming that the intermunicipal agreement is actually executed. That's what I have to say.
Great. Thank you. Jim?
Okay, yeah, I'm assuming that, at least for now, all of the three options that Amy had mentioned are still on the table, and that we really won't come to as to what the preferred option is until after the next public hearing. With that in mind, I do have some specific comments on the draft intermunicipal agreement, but I think it's better to wait until we decide whether that's the preferred option before we get into those technical details.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mark?
I agree with Wayne that we should on this and deal with the presentation from the tech school. To Amy's point regarding information that they may want to prepare, looking over the agreement, really what it does to me is promote quite a few questions as to exactly what the activities would entail, what would call for structures, a general overall plan of some fashion will all come together. It's a pretty broad spectrum, and there's a lot of ways it can go, but the agreement, as it's spelled out right now, from what I understand, it touches on a lot of things, but there's very little specific information. I'd like to have a little more narrowed down picture of it to have a little better understanding. The issue of public access is a concern. If there's going to be agricultural activity there, in my mind, the public access would have to be limited, primarily for safety. It's pretty involved.
Yeah. I did, to that end, I did have a small conversation with council when they sent this over about that, because something important to me too is to vet that and see if there's a way that we can make it work, while understanding there's liability when you have an operation like that there. And a suggestion that they made, that we'll talk more about on May 4th, is having tours of the farm, having farm days out there, having, you know, if they're growing Christmas trees or something like that, you have something out there on a certain day where you promote access for that day, but don't make it a free-for-all for the rest of the year. So I didn't even think of that would be considered public access, but for this property or any, that would actually be considered a means, potentially to accommodate some public use of the
And that's
land.
touched on in the agreement, too.
Yeah, so
And
we'll go more, and I'd like to hear more about.
So that the tech is, and how far along are they as far as developing?
I don't know. I haven't gotten, and I don't know why. I haven't heard too much of the details. I'll try to sit down and have a meeting with Bob Sanborn. I found that was most effective when I did that in the just sit down face to face for an hour and hash a few things out rather than, emails or phones. So I'll set that up.
All right. Probably the thing that jumped out at me too was timing of this whole proposal. So what does the tech school do? Seems to me the primary agricultural season is in the summer, and I assume that they're not in session. I should have checked that, but I would just think like any other school, they have a summer recess, right? And what are their plans for the
We
property?
would have to see if students who are in an agricultural program would I don't know if there's a different school year, if it's structured differently. I'll ask,
Yeah, all right.
especially about summer or are they gonna propose to grow crops that aren't, summer is when you pretty much grow crops.
Yeah.
And animals need care year round, so
Right.
who's gonna be in charge in the summer months especially?
Right, and, winter breaks and all that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
so-
Questions that Mr. Sanborn will answer, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah,
when we
I
get
will.
him here.
I'll try to ask him preemptively so he's not.
Yeah, so I think
Surprised.
we want to know what his thoughts are on the scope of the program that he would run there. How broad is it? Animal husbandry? Is it just pure agriculture? Is it, give us some idea, I
Yeah.
think. And obviously, until we have that, I think it'd be difficult for us to really make a decision as far as the three options that we're considering too. And the first two would to let Leo continue to lease it or put it back out for RFP are fairly easy, but this one is more complex. We do need more information to be well informed about, make a decision on that.
And another option that I didn't remember to put on is, in the absence of having all this information in a time decision, you could extend the lease, the current lease, if Mr. Kukunis wanted it for another year.
The selectmen could.
The selectmen could, yeah. So we'll talk more about that as time comes, but that potentially could be an option as well.
All right, good.
They have the current lessee, if you were to change use, not use, but people, they have to be able to have time to get their things out of there,
Right,
so.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have one final question. The contents of the municipal agreement draft, but in one of the minutes that I was reviewing, there was discussion of having to have the agreement was going to be one ready for voting on at annual town meeting. So it doesn't appear that's happening, so is there even actually a possibility that we could enter into such an agreement?
The town
Right.
council has weighed in and said we do not need to go to town meeting for that, because you're doing you're sticking with the use, the conservation and agriculture. So I'll get that in writing, but that been stated to me from.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good. So, are there any comments from audience? People on the phone, any questions, comments? close this hearing on this and move on to the rest of our agenda. Second item on the agenda is a request for a change in plan for 0 Clearwater Drive, map 73, parcels P94 and 95 for reconfiguration of a building.
I'm not sure if anybody is on the phone for this. If you're on the phone, you have to hit *6 to be heard. This is 0 Clearwater. If nobody's present, I can let you know what it is.
All right.
All right, not hearing anybody. This was a project that was recently approved by the Conservation. They've made minor revisions and would like your approval. I thought it was appropriate as a change in plan. The front porch would actually be smaller, and there will not be a little deck on the north side of the building. They would like another stone walkway between the garage and the house. This is actually less square footage of structure than what you permitted, but I thought we need to have the right plan on record, so this would be the way you do it.
Good. Why don't we just move right to questions or comments from the commissioners? Wayne, do you have any comments?
No, I do not.
Alan?
None.
John?
No comment.
Mark?
No remarks.
We're easy
Get
tonight.
Brad's on too.
Brad, do you have any comments on this? I think you muted, Brad.
Now he's muted.
No, I can't hear you, Brad.
Okay, try calling in.
All right, I think that's a no. So can we have a motion on the request for a change in plan, please?
Okay, I'll move that we approve the request for a change in plan for 0 Clearwater Drive, map 73, parcel P94 and P95 for the reconfiguration of the building footprint.
And a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Brad, just wave your hand if you like it.
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. I'm an
We're
aye,
getting
so
there.
it passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is a request for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 45 Neal Road, map 16, parcel N1-41. Do we have a proponent on this?
I believe somebody from Coastal's online. We can't, Sean.
Yes, could state your name, please?
Hang on, we seem to be having, just give us 1 minute.
This is the new
This
sound
is on
system.
our end, yeah.
Can they hear the meeting going on?
Sean, are people in the, on the computer, can you hear us? Yes, they can. We're having. I think he's trying to call on the phone. We'll see if a phone. So if you're on the phone and you want to speak, it's *6. And we can try that.
Can they try to talk now?
Sean, can you try to speak? No, he's not.
My apologies to everyone here. Amy warned me that they have a new sound system that they're putting in place tonight, so
It was
maybe we're
working.
the mode.
If you need me to call Jamie, let me know.
I'll give her a call right now, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're good. Started early.
Hey, so we're still muted on the laptop. I muted it on the volume, but there's still no, they can hear us on our end, the meeting volume, but the callers can't, we can't hear the callers. Okay, thank you. Our Jamie's coming down, so.
Oh. Down, is she over at the
She's
community?
gonna leave the area, so.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we move on to the next item then? Or we can circle back to this one?
We can if we don't have public for everything. Let's see if we have, actually, I think for 17 Colonial, everybody here who's expected to be here. That's right. I mean, abutters potentially could be in the audience wanting to participate online. Sorry, folks.
Is there anybody just on, are there people just on the phone? Or could you see everybody?
I can't, there's some people on the phone that I can't see.
Yeah, our phone audio is kind of cutting out too right now, so we're trying to figure out how to get audio back on.
Should we take a few minute recess and we can mute here too? All right,
So we're muted?
we're gonna take a short recess while we figure out some sound issues.
Could hear,
I can't see what, Sean, what did,
he said I could hear Brown.
I could hear Brad, so they can hear each other on their end, like between the two people on the, he could hear Brad, but we can't hear either of them. All right, we're gonna take a short recess, folks.
We're not expecting people to be against the project.
But for the public, I wanna make sure we're not violating open meeting law.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to give the wrong impression.
Trying to keep things moving, but.
Maybe it's a speaker that's not plugged in. What might be great.
Everybody sign in?
Oh, I think we got it.
Yeah, we got
Oh,
it.
we're back.
Can someone say something on your
I'll be
end?
right back.
Hello,
Alright,
Yep,
you can hear me now?
yes, we can.
Okay, great.
We've got one or two people that left the room, so if you wait just a few minutes, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, that looks good.
sorry to come in.
No, that's okay. Like, that's why I put this here.
Yeah,
Most of
And
it.
I took it.
Can you hear me on my screen?
Yes, we can.
Just the way they do it. They run over the vines.
All right, I just hung up my phone then.
Stand up one time. They'll go down, like, and they'll run along with the vines, and then wherever the sand ends, on the last load, they just quickly switch over and then pick it up, move on.
Wish I was sorry.
Yeah, you should have come by, I mean, he really don't.
I didn't know if he had some kind of
Okay.
Learning still.
No,
Oh, that's understandable.
I've been making mine on each night.
yeah.
First section. It's all.
oh yeah, yeah, well, just a little extra work.
Amy, we have sound on the screen now.
Way back.
Go ahead when you think we're ready.
We're ready to go.
Okay. Wait for Jim to get back.
Wait,
I
yeah.
the mud hole the other night at 3 o'clock. Get down to 30. I said, well, maybe it's 20 in the bog. We'll just,
Oh, tagging. Conservation.
little mud hole bog.
Where was the 30-degree temperature? Okay.
Where are you going to be? Yeah, a couple hours.
I think we're back in business here. Once again, the item that we're discussing is a application for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 45 Neal Road, map 16, parcel N1-41. So it's all yours now.
Good evening. For the record, Sean Riley with Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. We're here before you for a resource area delineation. This is kind of a unique situation on 45 Neal Road. The lot does have land subject to coastal storm flowage encroaching into the property basically from Saquatucket Harbor. It comes around the backside at elevation 11 and then sneaks into the backyard of 45 Neal Road. The uniqueness of this situation, the coastal bank or lack thereof that we're trying to show you. The definition, as we know, for the top of coastal bank based on Mass DEP policy 92-1 is the seaward face or side of any elevated landform. The situation that we have on 45 Neal Road is not an elevated landform. It's actually a depression within the backyard. And you can see the construction of the home of 45 Neal Road back in 2014. They built the house, they filled a portion. You can actually see the piles of fill on the screen, where they filled a majority of the backyard, but they did leave this depression within the backyard. So the whole area is at the same elevation. This house is at elevation 14, this one at 10, this one at 13, there at 16. Zone at elevation 11 comes in through and across the road through this property and then funnels into this depression. So this essentially is not an elevated landform. It's a hole in the yard of 45 Neal Road. That's why we're contesting the fact that this is not a coastal bank, because it is not an elevated landform any more than a swimming pool that has a depression in it would be a bank in a flood zone. This is just on a slightly larger scale than a swimming pool, but this is the argument that we're making, that this is actually not a coastal bank from the perspective of showing you the topography on the property. Again, the flood zone comes in from the east side across the road, funnels through the property. This is approximately elevation, and then funnels down into this depression that's in the backyard. If there was to be a coastal bank defined this property, it would be this green line. And I don't think I've ever seen a coastal bank close on itself around the perimeter of a hole. The property it carries over onto the property to the south that had a swimming pool constructed 2 years ago. They showed land subject to coastal storm flowage within their backyard, which again created this bowl or this hole within the backyard. That's essentially the case that we're making, is that this is not an elevated landform. It's a depression that actually does not serve as a vertical buffer to stormwater. All it is a ponding area for anything that does make it over the adjacent property. If it were to ever make it over the adjacent property, it's never been flooded before, and it would only be in a catastrophic event of a hurricane at the 100-year storm event that this would see some ponding in the backyard. With that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have comments?
Yeah, Sean, can you pan back over to your mapper?
Yeah.
And if you zoom
Is
out.
it this one here, or you want the other one that has the flood zone on it?
If you could put the flood zone on it, that would be helpful.
Yep.
So I had thought
So the
that
flood
this
zone
was-
is all the blue that's shown. Here is the shoreline coming into Saquatucket Harbor. And then back into this area, it's the Stillwater AE zone, elevation 11.
Okay, there's no direct connection out towards,
There is
Depot.
no connection. There is no connection. It all comes in through Saquatucket Harbor
about farther
back
east?
into this area.
Farther east?
There isn't a connection on the east side either.
Okay, it's just hard to read from here.
Yep.
And I should have printed it out for myself before I came to this meeting. So, this is a unique situation. There's technically, what you have is a low elevation from Saquatucket Harbor all the way to this property. And be it man-made or not, you do have this depression here. So in the event of a catastrophic storm that would flood this entire area, I argue that you do have, that this would be somewhat of a vertical buffer here. But is it acting as a coastal bank? As I said in my notes, I don't think it's not acting as a coastal bank. It's not a sediment source. It's not a wildlife habitat. If you do consider it a coastal bank, I would think going forward, you should consider whatever they wanted to do, potentially to have variances for it, because it's not acting like your traditional coastal bank being so far inland. I guess I'm still not, I mean, I want to agree with you, Sean. And we've had a lot of discussions in the office, of several people about this, and I think it still is somewhat up for interpretation. So I guess with that, I would like to hear how the commission interprets it too.
All right. Okay. Mark, do you want to start us off this time?
Sure. I guess I agree with Amy that, that is open to interpretation. And as I see it, in a case like that, it is extremely isolated. And if there was a catastrophic event that would impact, it seems to me that would be the smallest problem in the area.
Oh, I agree.
So I would see no reason not to go forward with entertaining what it is they may do in the future.
So what they're asking us to do is to say, is the only resource area here flood zone?
Correct.
Okay.
Jim?
Okay, I think, as Mark said, open to interpretation, and I'd like to hear some of the other comments from other commissioners before I make a decision as to how I would interpret it.
Okay, thank you. John?
So, I need to clarify, both Amy and is it Sean who is on the phone?
Yes.
Had to say, you were questioning whether this is connected, whether the flood zone is connected. I think one of the problems with what Sean was showing there is having the cross-hatched overlay on the satellite image. It's very hard to see. If you just look at over the base map, it's a lot clearer what flood zone is and is not. But looking at that on Mass Mapper, it's very clear that even though the connection is a little convoluted, that area is connected directly to Saquatucket Harbor. And it was unclear to me whether Sean was saying that was the case or was not the case. And I still don't know, given that that's the case, it's really unclear to me what I can do here. I think we have to be clear as to what it is and proceed from there. And I agree that it doesn't seem like that's a big problem there, but first step is to be clear about what the area is and how to categorize it.
All right, thank you. Let me jump to Brad so I don't forget you, Brad. Any questions, comments?
Hi, Ernie, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I have no further comments beyond what you've already said. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alan?
I just had a question. What's the relevance of Saquatucket Harbor to their, Saquatucket Harbor have to do with this determination, or?
It means that's where the water comes from. It's a low elevation from here all the way to Saquatucket, so in the event of a catastrophic coastal flood event, where this elevation, the water could theoretically come all the way in to here, and that the slope where the flood zone is would be the extent of where the water would come up to.
And the only reason why I ask is we all know that Saquatucket was man-made. So the elevation has changed from man's doings, and I don't know how that impact would relevant to this request in Neil Road. If the marsh was still there and the sediment, I don't know what the difference would be in topography or elevations. I mean, I guess water comes in, it's gonna do whatever it's gonna do in a catastrophe, but,
So this was reevaluated in 2014, the flood zones, and 2020. Current conditions of Saquatucket as they were
at that time.
taken into account.
Right, but I'm just saying, if they're saying that hole, that was pre-existing, that was there,
Oh,
you know, I mean, so that was pre-existing before the change of the Saquatucket Harbor. That's all I'm trying to say.
I don't know.
There was no issues then, so.
Any comments?
Yeah, the only thing I'd be very comfortable with letting that go is just definition, it's in the flood zone. That's it. Very simple in my mind.
Amy, just for everyone's benefit, can you define what constitutes a coastal bank for us?
Of course, I don't have my book with me. I can go get it.
Let me see if I can.
John, you want to take a shot at it?
Yeah, I have the definition on the screen of 92-1. So it's the seaward face or side of any elevated landform other than a coastal dune, which lies at the landward edge of a land subject to tidal action or other wetland. So I guess that's my argument. This is not an elevated land. See when you associate a coastal bank. When you look at coastal banks, especially out here in front of Saquatucket Bluff, you're looking at real elevated landforms that form the shoreline or form the inner harbor of Saquatucket. But this is an area that is a depression within a backyard that does come to elevation 11, and we're not contesting that the elevations are incorrect, that the flood elevation 11 would come across the road. The water would be about 1 foot deep in here. And then when it makes it into the backyard, because of this depression, it's 6 or 7 feet deep on one side, which then gives a slope on either side that, you know, it's not an elevated landform that is confining water or preventing storm damage to the neighborhood. It's basically, if you filled this hole in, the water would only come to this point instead of coming in this hole, and it wouldn't have any impact on any of the surrounding neighborhood. So that's why we're saying that it's an anomaly, that it's a hole in the ground and it's not really a coastal bank.
John?
Okay, I have one additional comment, which is, what makes me uncomfortable about this argument is that if we accept the argument that Sean is making, we're beginning to parse up the details of the definition of a flood zone, and we're opening ourselves up to arguing about this in many cases where we're considering that's in a flood zone, it has a bank in the flood zone, but it's not directly exposed to, say, the ocean or Saquatucket Harbor. And I know we've had at least one, maybe more than one case where that is a question. I would way prefer to take the approach here of continuing to use the strict definition of what is a coastal bank, and in a case like this, where it's clear that it's not impactful, that we just grant a variance, because it's clear we should grant a variance. I don't want to get into parsing and making convoluted arguments, excuse me, but it is a complicated argument that Sean is making about why this isn't actually a coastal bank. We can get all hung up in those kinds of arguments here, we can get hung up in those kinds of arguments in other places, and I would really like to.
Comment.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is I would recommend that you, me to get a legal opinion on this, because I think that it's not just particular to your project, Sean. I'm sorry that this is the one that's happening to, but it's gonna happen. And we've seen it happen. We're gonna see it happen more with some projects. So I'd like to ask you if you would mind us continuing for 2 weeks so we could get that legal opinion and roadmap for this and future projects that are in similar situations.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. I guess my other suggestion that may be even simpler would be to call it a coastal bank, but come back with an RDA and come before you with an RDA for the work that we're doing, and basically have a negative, the resource area or the impacts to the resource area are insignificant, and you would find a negative determination for the work that would be done. That way we don't have to get into the coastal bank, whether it is or isn't. Either way, I'm fine with.
So that'll be up to you and your client, which way you want to proceed. I think regardless of this property, I think I want to ask for that, a legal opinion on situations such as this anyways.
Would it be a legal or an additional consultant, third-party consultant?
That's a good question.
So
I
what-
mean, I think it's, we're talking about language, so maybe legal.
ask two questions of Sean first. Do you have any idea what the intent is on the property?
I don't yet. I know there's some additions that'll be added to the property, some modifications for the structure. That's all I know at this point.
So
They didn't want to get too far down the road with any design before knowing what they were up against.
So if it were designated.
And I wouldn't mind continuing for a couple of weeks to get a legal opinion either.
If it were designated as a coastal bank, then it'd be subject to 50-foot restrictions and that sort of thing, correct?
It would be unless we filed for an RDA and you all made a determination that the bank was not a significant.
Right,
Right, Amy?
correct.
All right.
But we'd have to see what I'd have to look and see what the project is. You're more than willing to send me what that it would be.
Mr. Chairman, I am going along with Amy's recommendation with regard to getting a legal opinion, because to me, the issue is turning on the interpretation of the wording of the regulation. And I think we need a clarification of that before we can make any type of determination.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other comments from the audience or people on the phone? All right, with that, can we have a motion then?
May 4th.
Okay, yeah, I'll motion that we continue the hearing on the notice of resource area delineation for 45 Neal Road, map 16, parcel N1-41 to, and what would the
May
date?
4th.
Until the next meeting on May 4th, 2022.
I'll second.
Second, favor?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, motion passes.
Thank you for your consideration.
See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a request, an RDA, request for determination of applicability for 51 Deep Hole Road, map 17, parcel A1-40 to install a patio, stepping stones, and reconfigure.
Yep, come on up, Sean.
Sean O'Leary, O'Leary Landscaping, representing Joel and Lisa Wire. So we are proposing to add a 640 square foot permeable behind the house and stepping stones from that location over to the driveway and again to the door, which that part is outside of 100. In that, eliminating a solid walkway that they have right now from the driveway around the side door and shrink the driveway square footage, which was encroached into the 50 before. We found out once we started working at the property that the land that the driveway is currently on is not theirs. So originally it was like a, I guess, common area walk through, but the gentleman next door has purchased that land years ago and just kind of let it be, but now has requested that they move the driveway over. Originally, we weren't even gonna do the driveway.
Okay.
We've also proposed mitigation, which is actually over the square footage of the walkway, pavers, and any driveway that's inside the.
All right. Okay. Amy, do you have any comments?
Sure. Since I originally wrote my site summary, a lot of the questions that I had have gotten cleared up. So thank you for revising the plan. Wanted to make sure that the patio was not in the 0 to 50. It's not. Where the steppers are, there's currently bluestone pathway as well as I think out there now. It's pretty impervious. So what would be in between these steps?
Just, well, anywhere where we have, it's gonna wind up just being the micro clover.
Yep.
Because that's what they proposed for that whole mitigation area.
Yeah.
So anything that's disturbed, and that micro clover is probably more likely just gonna come up to where the patio is because we have to disturb that area to get in.
Yep.
And that way they don't have to mow it.
Okay. So pervious itself is fairly impervious.
Yeah, it's just brick.
Yeah. What is going to be the base for the new patio?
Crushed aggregate.
Okay.
And we do a screed, masonry sand screed layer, so everything's permeable.
So no need for a drain?
No, everything's gonna push away, and there's already drainage for the downspouts
Okay.
on the property, so it would just be whatever hits the patio.
Yep.
Which will pitch away and obviously leach through.
Okay, good. With your planting for this area, what I would like to see, and it's something that if the commission's comfortable with it, I can work with the applicant, is to show where these shrubs are going to be. Because right now it's just a mitigation area, which your area is larger than what you need to do for your mitigation requirement. With shrubs, we tend to like to see groupings of shrubs together, not just like one here, one here, one here. Grouping to provide some habitat. And the neighbor has requested as well some type of post and rail fence along the back property line. And that's something the commission should really talk about because that's right up against almost the edge of the wetland. It would be a new structure in the 0 to 50, but it would also keep people out of a sensitive area. You can look at the plan, the back of their property is here, and the edge of the wetland is on the adjacent property, actually, who belongs to the neighbor who lives here. Where the microclover, are you proposing in this mitigation area to mow at all?
Not if they're graded to the microclover, we won't need to.
Okay,
It's just. we
but
don't
there's
have
gonna
to
be
irrigate.
shrubs
There'll
and
be
stuff in
shrubs,
there?
Yeah, we have to
Okay.
do to get the shrubs acclimated, but other than that, it's pretty drought resistant.
I guess where I'm thinking is somehow creating something, either a split rail fence and boulders, a line of shrubs to create more of a living fence. So we know, so the people, either your owners now or down the road, know that this is a mow zone. They can't be mowing and cutting in there. Would your clients be amenable to something?
I mean, without speaking to them, I would say yes.
Yeah.
The green fence would probably make the most sense if we could just bring some more plants in and just stagger them along the line, even if we
Yeah.
have to put a sign out there and a few boulders, that way it's not just an actual fence.
Yeah. If your clients and the neighbor wanted to talk in the future about a split rail fence at the property line, we could talk about that. It seems like, I understand their desire, but, it would seem like where we might want a living fence or a split rail would be actually on this property, not on the property line, but, I'd be happy if the commission's comfortable to make sure, that there is a living fence of or a combination towards the wetland from where the path is, where, cause their path does dip into the 50, but towards the wetland from that to use their plantings to create a living fence. And I would recommend approval of the project with that.
So you're proposing around the outside of the pathway then, where it intersects the 50.
Yeah, and not a straight line, so it looks unnatural, but somewhat of we can talk a staggered line in this general area, so it looks a little bit more natural.
All right, good.
Using these plants that they've spec'd out.
Comments from the commissioners? Wayne, any?
No, sounds pretty straightforward.
Brad, do you have any questions, comments? We can't hear you, Brad. Let's move on. John, do you have any questions?
I just have a question about the microclover. I've heard of people mixing microclover with grass seed. I have a lot of it growing in my lawn. But what happens when are you proposing to clear out all the existing lawn?
No,
Or are you
what's
just gonna
existing is
oversee?
Cape lawn, so.
So you're gonna have a mix of microclover and grass there?
Yeah, usually it's just like when the regular Cape mix grows in with it.
But it's never gonna get mowed?
It shouldn't have to. I mean, we're gonna have enough plants in here that it's just gonna be a naturalized area.
So I guess my comment is that I'm a little uncomfortable with including 3,800 square feet of microclover as mitigation if what is happening is overseeding an existing lawn with some extra microclover. That doesn't sound much like mitigation to me, and I'd like to see the total square feet of the shrubs that are being proposed. And
In order to do a green fence, we have to add those anyway.
I just want to make sure that that amounts to the appropriate amount of mitigation. And like I said, I'm not so comfortable with including a broad area of overseeding microclover as mitigation.
I understand. That's why I wanted to put there's in effect a no-mow zone, whereas now it is mowed. I mean, I wouldn't know the areas of these plants off the top of my head to be able to calculate that for you, so.
We're gonna need to add more, but if we're
Yeah.
gonna we don't have enough there to do a full fence anyway, so we just have to
You have to add some.
add some more.
Okay. So I think the commission, I'm hearing you want a little bit more specifics
Yes, please.
on the plantings, like where they're gonna go, things like that. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Jim?
I have no comment.
Mark?
I have no remarks.
Brad, let me go back to you. Can you hear us?
He's also a caller. I think he's also on the
All right. Yes, we
Yes.
can now, yep.
Yeah, sorry about that. Star 6. No comments, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I agree with what Amy's asked for as far as sort of some plan of where the plantings would go. You've got about 38, if I'm adding it up correctly, about plants that will be going in there, correct?
As of right now, yes.
Yeah, some of them, like the shadblow serviceberry, are bigger.
One question for you. I know you're moving the driveway over to get it onto the property line or off of the neighbor's property. the aprons, looks like it's still going over off of the,
And we did discuss that with the neighbor.
He's
So
fine with it.
his property is there's a area is the one in between that the apron's on. His property is the other slipper
Oh,
that
I
he
see.
purchased.
Okay.
So both the homeowners discussed what it was gonna be, and they had this plan approved by him prior.
okay, good. Is that an access area then, that common area?
I have no idea. It's right now, I mean, it's a driveway, just a driveway with a
Yeah.
loop on it, but, access to wetlands, what it was, I have no idea, but there's just two separate little pie shapes, and he purchased one of them.
Okay, all right, good. I have no other questions, so we'll have you come back next meeting on May 4th.
I'd like some more specifics on
Yeah, I
the
can just send
plantings,
the-
and we can look at it.
Get you a new planning plan.
That would be great.
Yep.
We have room on the agenda for May 4th?
I wouldn't go putting more on there, but yes.
Okay, can we have a
But yeah,
motion on
this is
this,
fine.
please?
I'll move that we continue the hearing on the request for a determination of applicability for 51 Depot Road, map 17, parcel A1-40,
To May 4th.
to May 4th.
And a second, please. Second. From Alan, all in favor? Aye. Brad?
Aye.
Good, thank you.
Aye.
Gotcha. All right. Next item on the agenda is another request for determination of applicability for 17 Colonial Way, map 15, parcel S8-3 for the addition and relocation of stairs.
Good evening, Dan Croto from Moran Engineering. Harry Ellis, contractor. The contractor on the site, and Sandra Tanko, the property owner, one of the property owners as well. The request, the proposal is to do an increase the dining room, I believe it is, on what's the existing deck, so keep an open foundation, increase the dining room out the 8 feet. And then remove the existing dangerous spiral stairs and add new steps from the deck down to the yard. The spiral steps are within the 60 feet to the coastal bank, and the new steps, section of it, a small section would also be within that area. The closest is a kind of a segmented coastal bank, a small piece of coastal bank, which is seaward facing, a little different than what Sean Riley was looking at. Sean's case was across multiple subdivisions and roads. This abuts right up to the Saquatucket Harbor small salt pond on that. Having said that, the majority of the land coming from the south is not coastal bank because the slope itself is less than the 1 in 10. And then as you go in front of a section of what is this coastal bank, as you can see, is the neighbor's lawn right down to the wetland. So it's lawn, then an area of wooded where the floodplain hits. That slope would be considered a coastal bank, so this segmented coastal bank, I drew the setbacks too, and those are the closest setbacks. The actual vegetated wetland and water are more than 100 feet from the whole project. The yard itself is unirrigated grass, I believe. And to people that were out there, it looks pretty unfertilized as well. To go over it again, the existing addition is on the existing deck. There'd be no full foundation under it, as is the steps will come down from the patio to the yard. They are actually inside of the existing septic tanks that pump to the leaching area to the front yard. The addition, removing the spiral steps and then the new, standard 4-foot of the yard, it adds up to an extra 44 square feet within the 100. Times 2 is 88, so the thinking was the closest place to that coastal bank that it has been mowed area to take 90 square feet of that away, which is the triangle to the project. Proposed native plants 90 square feet, which is approximately 25 by a little under 4 feet, I guess. So that's the proposal. Per the DEP, if the project is not going to impact the wetland resources, then the commission, by the commission's judgment, then the commission has the ability to allow it under the RDA. Our thinking is this whole area is on the lawn inside of the existing septic tanks, and that it wouldn't impact the coastal bank whatsoever.
Thank you. Amy, any comments?
I agree, the project will not have an adverse impact to the coastal bank. Both the existing and proposed sets of stairs are within 60 feet of the top of coastal bank. There's no closer happening than what's existing now. Slight increase in coverage. In the 100-foot buffer, you're proposing 90 square feet of mitigation, which meets your 2-to-1 requirement for a new home. And I would recommend approval with a -3, with conditions that no fertilizers or chemicals be used in the 100-foot buffer to either the BVW or the coastal bank, which it doesn't look like any of that's happening now, but this would stick with the permit and the property in case for the future. Roof runoff from the new addition go into a dry well, and that the owners work with me about proper pruning techniques for some of the vegetation closer to the water, meaning the oak trees that have been historically pruned, and with proper management can actually become viable shrub type specimens, and while still preserving the view you have there.
Thank you. Wayne, do you have any comments?
No, I don't.
Alan?
No comment.
Jim?
No comment.
Mark?
Nope, not today.
Brad?
No comments. Thank you.
Okay. I have no comments either. I want to compliment the homeowner on resisting the urge to put fertilizer and herbicides on the lawn. It's nice to see a property like that. So, with that, I have no questions either. If we can have a motion on this, please.
Sure. I would like to move that we approve the request for a determination of applicability for 17 Colonial Way, map 15, parcel S8-3, with a -3 determination.
Second.
Second from Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so it passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Town of Harwich, 0 Depot Street, map 36, parcel M, relocation of fencing and plantings. Thank
You
you.
want me to sit there?
I don't think it's necessary.
All right, so I'm talking now as a representative from the town, not as your conservation agent for this project. The proposed project is on the Conservation Commission's property of the Bell's Neck Conservation Area. And as per the land management plan that we had done many years ago for the Bell's Neck, one of the main goals was moving the parking area that's next to the fish ladder back away from the herring run. In order to control the cars, we are proposing to install a post and rail fencing to keep people from parking where they currently park, which is practically in the water. and from trampling the area, and we'd like to native plantings between the run and the post and rail fence to create more of a buffer. It was our desire to try to get all the side of the 50-foot no disturb zone and replant that, but it was determined that at this time, our native vegetation would need to be removed, and we didn't see how the benefit would be that much greater. So we're not suggesting that at this time to move the parking completely outside the 50-foot. We're hoping to gain about 10 additional feet from where it currently is now, like an additional 10-foot strip of native vegetation. Still allow people to go over over the fish ladder. Still allow on the northern side of the parking area around. There's an area where scientists from Division of Marine Fisheries go in to access for the count, as well as people putting kayaks. They drive right down to that now. We are proposing to still have 4-foot wide access for people to walk and access that way, or to carry a kayak or canoe through there. The project had an administrative review to cut a few hazard trees along the edge of the run. They were about to fall on. They could have taken large portions of the bank with them had they have gone and potentially interrupted the run. We left the stumps in place. They're kind of acting like bollards. AmeriCorps also recently cleared only invasive vegetation on the slope opposite to the run. And to keep people off of it and prep for pre-planting, we did install a post and rail preemptively there. I hope that you're okay with that. It's really to keep people off. The native plants that we picked for the area would be a mix of sweet pepperbush, arrowwood, viburnum, sweet fern, and a native grass and wildflower seed. And we would like to do that ASAP. So that is our request for you.
Thank you. Question?
How close to the run is that fence gonna be? Or how far away from the?
At places, some places about, other places about 15.
50?
15.
Oh, 15, I'm sorry. Okay. Is there still gonna be plenty of room for people? There's a cluster up there now, and if it gets any smaller.
I did talk to DPW about it, just to make sure, you know, big trucks down there to make sure they could turn around. I don't know why I just had such a hard time with that. And they said, yes, there's still enough room to maneuver.
Along those lines, I would say for the fire department, make sure they get access there and rescue all that stuff, because a lot of things happen down there. How is the parking lot itself? I know for many years, is the drainage still draining towards the river, or?
Sometimes. It all goes to the river eventually.
Do you think we should really do a comprehensive improvement down there in the future? I mean, the fence, I understand that as a start, but I would like to see a large-scale improvement in the whole area. I think a lot of the trees should come out of there, because I think it just inhibits a lot of things from the natural vista, the views, the conditions of ongoing maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
I think leaving it open is the way it should be. It's a beautiful spot. It's really a sacred spot in the town of Harwich, I think, for everybody that knows that area. And I think we should really do a lot better job of it as a town. And, you know, sometimes people just kind of, it's out of sight, out of scene, and they don't care about it until something happens. So, that's all I got to say.
Trying to give it a little bit of attention and starting this.
John?
No comments.
No comment.
Mark?
Oh, I think this is a good first step.
Brad, this is your area of expertise, so any comments?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, not really. I mean, I want to thank Amy for all the work she's doing on this, and I guess from a procedural standpoint, I would have liked to seen the tree cutting included in the RDA. I understand why Amy did it this way, but I would have preferred seeing it all together. And it's not because it's a problem, but just it's the point of being consistent, with all applicants. And I guess I differ a little bit from Alan because I'd rather not see too many trees taken down. Trees are really important for canopy, very important for shade. So I probably would have liked to seen maybe one of those white oaks and black oaks remain. So anyways, that doesn't change this project. I think it's really good what Amy's doing. I think it's excellent to have the fence there. And it's just an opportunity to bring up that point that I think we need to be consistent, across the board. But otherwise, things look good. I think AmeriCorps, they cut a lot of stuff on the pond side of the fishway and maybe a little bit too much there as well. But maybe we can plant some native plants there to try to get a little more shrub back there. It looks like, overall, I think there might have been a little bit too much cutting there, in my mind anyways. Thank you.
It was all of it was invasive.
Oh.
That was cut.
Okay.
More of it.
But it replaced with some natives.
Yes, it's only cut, it wasn't treated or anything, so it's gonna grow back with vigor. So I wouldn't wanna plant something right away until we have a couple years of management under of that.
All right, just two questions for you. One, on the second picture that we've got here, there's a large gap between your drawn-in fence and the existing fences there. Is that actually as big as it looks?
Hang on,
I'm looking at this thing. Because
Where are
it
you
looks like you
talking?
could drive a truck through there.
Where it goes over the ladder. Access to the ladder.
oh, we can close that up, so people
4
can,
feet or something
yeah,
like
so
that.
people can walk through, but, yep, we can close that up. If you're amenable to another section of fence coming off of the fence that's there,
Yes, I
coming
think
this
you,
way.
yeah, I think you need to, because
Yep.
otherwise I can even see people parking on the far side of the fence too.
Oh, we can
Put
do
up.
that.
And then, as far as the fish ladder itself, are people still going to be able to access to the fish counter and all?
Yes.
Okay. they
Yep,
can still
so
walk
on the
through.
other page here, they can walk, they'll still be able to walk here and get in the water to sample and count, and then people observing the fish can observe it from the ladder itself.
Okay. Okay, good. Good. I have no other questions on this. Looks good, Amy, I think. But it's a good start anyhow, so. We can have on this, please.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the request for a determination of applicability for 0 Depot Street, 36, parcel M3.
Can we have a second, please? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Brad?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item is the notice of intent for 280 Bank Street, map 32, parcel A2-5 for a pool and walkway. It's a continuation of hearing that we've had previously. Hi.
Good evening, Dan Croto from Moran Engineering, here with Kathleen Lockler and Walkier.
Well, your name's is hard.
Mine is hard too. And Jennifer Chase, the planter and not architectural designer, landscape designer. So this is a continuation from a month or so ago. Since then, the original proposal was an enclosed structure that was larger than what's being proposed. Pricing coming back, and it being too much as everything seems to cost these days. So it was scaled back to what was affordable. And so the new outline is shown on the plan. I'm not sure what the commission got for an architectural plan, but today we received, the new architectural plan that showed the actual foundation. So the pool, and then there's a foundation around that's larger than the pool area where the spa equipment is. It's all within the area that's shown on the site plan.
The one we have is revised 32922.
32922, correct. is
That's
the
most
correct.
recent, right?
If there was an actual architectural plan that was submitted as well. The only thing I would say about the architectural plan is, it's all within the same footprint, but, so the spa itself is, there is a foundation that's larger than the spa. That's still well within the deck limits. I guess I'm trying to get that idea across, so
Well, maybe what I should explain is, this is it's not a regular pool, it's a therapeutic spa, and it does have quite a bit of equipment there for it. So that will go into the area that's excavated and has a foundation. And then it would be, we're not going to be able to enclose the building, considering really partly because how long it's taken to really get to this point, but we already have the pool that's all ready to go and be installed. And we do have a pool installer from the company who works with the contractor on that. But, so there is, within the foundation, there will be some equipment that goes in prior to the pool getting set on a pad.
And I think and this is and the pool equipment is the driveway side of the deck, and again, it's still within the footprint you're looking at. The only reason I'm making a issue out of it is so when hoping that we get approved, when the building permit comes through Amy's desk, that she's not thrown off if the footprint of within the footprint, if the foundation of the spa is different than what's being looked at.
So the foundation will look different than the finished product, is that what we're talking about?
No, I just wasn't sure what was submitted to the commission, because a plan that just came to me today.
As long as the footprint is the same,
Same.
that's what we care about.
It'll be fine, okay.
Yep.
So with that, from the original a month ago, it was pulled away from the wetland even more. I have the hardscape number ×2 and showing an area on the site plan of the native plants. And then Jennifer Chase had drawn a landscape plan that covered well beyond what would typically be required, the 2 times mitigation to landscape yard between the native and the dwelling. And then beyond, also the generator pad needed to be moved, so that's been relocated to the north of the building, kept far enough away from the gas meter for it to be able to be installed. And beyond that,
The issue that we looked into, there was a question about how the pool was going to be filled and being brought into it and taken away from it. So we have contracted with a company, Indian Head Water Transportation, who is out of the South Shore, Mass. So that person is well familiar. He was actually recommended by the pool installer for this pool that he's done work with him. So he works on the Cape, and he's put me on the list whenever we're ready to have the spill done. So, and he comes highly recommended, 30 years experience, family-owned business and multi-generation families. Keep doing this job.
So with that, and if we have any questions about planting, Jennifer's here. I'd like to ask for questions.
Amy, do you have any comments on the revisions?
Sure. So the planting plan now is the engineering plan in regards. The engineering plan shows the generator to be moved to the northern side of the house, right on the 60-foot buffer line, kind of straddling it. In the planting plan, I mean, it just needs, the planting plan is a little bit different. It shows it just outside the 60-foot buffer. I would be comfortable with allowing it on the 60-foot line. I don't think the difference is a big deal. So the commission had continued this hearing in order to find out where it was going to be located so that we make sure it's outside the 50. It will be outside the 50. So I would recommend approval with the condition that the work to eradicate the knotweed start this spring. Is that feasible?
Yes.
Okay. In the meantime, while you're trying to get the knotweed eradicated, bare areas that are exposed of soil, we'd like to see that planted of conservation grass seed mix to help it stabilize before you can get planting. If you're not going to be able to plant right away, we don't want exposed soils for erosion purposes. So with the hope that you could start planting in the fall or if spring 2023, if that is depending on the success of your eradication.
Right.
Yes. So we would like, for the next couple of years, a 2-time annually report on the status of the knotweed eradication and the mitigation plantings.
Yeah.
So that would be a condition that I would recommend upon approval. And I would recommend, I know you're proposing to use a rug or blanket to suppress it, and that you've had some success with that. I would recommend to the commission that they add a condition to the project to allow a certified herbicide applicator using a cut and white method, only if necessary in the future. But I want to give you that leeway if you need it. Other than that, I would recommend approval with no chemicals or fertilizers to be used in the 100-foot buffer zone.
May I ask, so we'll be able to maintain the invasive species whenever we don't have to come back and get a...
Right.
Right.
Yep. So
permit.
one of the conditions would be to continually manage the invasives, and when you come for a certificate of compliance from us to close your permit out, then that would be an ongoing condition with the permit.
Okay, great.
Great. Good. Comments from the commissioners? Wayne?
No, pretty straightforward.
Alan?
No, good luck.
John?
I think I probably have to abstain.
There was only one hearing, but, so you can vote if you want, but if you don't need to.
I just have one question. Now that this is not going to be within an enclosed building, are you going to be covering the pool during the winter when it's due to the weather?
We'll definitely be covering we may be beyond the summer season.
Right, but there'll be a time during the winter where
There's
you...
two different covers. There's one that's a more temporary cover in use and another cover that you would put on for leaving it on for a period of time.
Okay. And my follow-up question to that is that I know you said that you were going to contract with somebody with regard to the drainage of the water in the pool. When it's covered, where is the drainage from either rain or snow melt? How's that going to be handled?
That's a good question, and I would assume that we have a few people who can, deal with that. But,
I can,
yeah.
I could submit to conservation agent, to Amy, the location of a dry well.
Okay.
This is where the land on the deck, and then it's gonna actually land in an enclosed concrete structure below it, which is slightly bigger than the pool, and then we put a drain to a dry well.
So it will go into a dry well. Okay, thank you.
And I'll submit that to Amy.
Okay. Those are the questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
No remarks.
Brad?
Yeah, I have to abstain, Ernie, on this one.
All right, okay, thank you. No, I have no questions. I'm dying to see how the blanket approach works on the Japanese knotweed, so we'll be asking Amy to give us her feedback on that.
She's very convinced about it.
I'm ready to be convinced.
I'm sure a lot of people would be. It's a whole lot easier than getting a,
Magic carpet.
yeah. So the steps on the back, there were initially, are there going to be any that go off the back?
Well, actually, we're just trying to really sort that through because that's one of the differences in changing it from an indoor building. So we don't have steps off the back of the deck planned currently.
Okay,
But it is a bit of access, there is an access question there that we might need to talk about further. We would come back if there's any solution other than what we have.
yeah. If they decide to add steps between the 60 and 100, would that be administrative? Or
Probably a change in plan since it came to you as a notice.
okay, all right. Good, hearing that, I have no other questions. Thank you for changing the generator location, and otherwise it looks good. So can we have a motion on this, please?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the notice of intent for 280 Bank Street, map 32, parcel 2A-5, subject to the fact that work on the eradication of knotweed be started this spring, and that an annual report be provided to the conservation agent once a year for a period of 3 years on the eradication of the knotweed and the mitigation planting.
Okay, thank you. And a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Anna.
Clarification?
Yes.
I had mentioned a twice annual monitoring report. Do you want once annually is fine. I just wanted to know.
I could agree to modify my motion to make that twice annually.
Usually with planting plans of a larger scale, we ask for biannual, so.
Okay, and Alan, you second the revised motion?
Second.
Good, all in favor, please?
Aye.
Brad? Are you abstaining?
One abstention.
Brad's abstention.
I'm abstaining.
And John is abstaining as well, so we have 5 in
Five.
favor, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next item on the agenda, notice of intent for 27 7th Street, map 101, parcel X3, to alter a garage, upgrade septic, and appurtenances. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks to Amy, she's done a lot of work.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Robin Wolf. I'm a professional land surveyor from Sweetser Engineering. This is a 32,000 square foot at the very end of 7th Street, abutting Long Pond. The majority of the parcel is even further to the south, away from the pond. However, there are right-of-ways through it that negate our probability of moving anything either back. Essentially, the existing garage, which is the small proposed one-bedroom, is being modified into a one-bedroom with a lav in it. The septic system is 29 years old. It was installed in 1993. It does not meet the current requirements, and so a new septic system is designed to go into its place. It complies with Title V. It's more than 100 feet from the setback from the top of bank. The only two things that are problematic is that there will be a water service from the existing house to go into the existing garage, bedrooms, lavatory, and there is also a proposed generator which is going to go right where the test holes number 1 and 2 were located originally. I don't think it's a good location for it. However, it's where the owner wants it, and they don't understand that when we did the test holes for at number 1 and number 2, their existing irrigation system is now in about 500 pieces. That was the main junction box. Good news is it's a generator. It would be used very sparingly, even if it's within the 100 feet, and it will have irrigation for the generator.
That'll keep it running, I hope.
We've tried to put almost everything more than 100 feet out. The only two things are the water service and the generator / irrigation system.
Amy, comments?
This is very minor, so in the future, this probably could be an RDA or something like that, because it's really at the extent of the 100-foot buffer, and you're talking about a septic line, or a water line and a generator, in the 100, so very minor, but it does give us the opportunity, so I think this is approvable. The one thing this does allow us to do, though, is to condition the, no fertilizers, and no chemicals on the property. Can't be certain that they are doing it. It did look like the lawn was treated in some fashion, so one of the conditions for approval would, that I would recommend is no fertilizers, and chemicals on the property, and I think that could be a good benefit to the general health of Long Pond if everybody were to do it.
Having been on the site, it's got plenty of geese fertilizer.
That too. So, but no, with that condition, I'd recommend approval of the project.
Okay, good, thank you. Wayne, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. This is pretty simple.
Al?
None? Nope.
Can I just sort of jump into this? Where is the generator gonna be? I don't see it on.
Right where test holes number 1 and 2 are located,
Test hole number.
just out,
I see number 2. That's where it's going to be, over where test hole 2 is?
They're right next to each other, one on top of the other,
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. Okay, so way off to the side then. Way over here.
kind of be in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. And you say the irrigation system is dead right now, in pieces?
I don't know if you want to call it an irrigation system or generator, but it's, that's where the existing junction box was for all of the irrigation, and that's where they want to put the generator.
Are they gonna reinvigorate the irrigation system?
The only other problems with trying to move that location, you'll notice that there's a driveway that continues up the back.
Yeah.
There's almost no room in that area. And obviously, you can see the proposed septic system calls for a tremendous amount of regrading of the
So
site.
they have to start from scratch and rebuild it completely. I'm not sure would we grandfather an irrigation system?
If they wanted to replace in kind, I don't think it.
Okay. We would prefer not to, is obviously is the.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to change the irrigation, they should talk to us, talk to me.
Okay, especially if they're not putting a whole lot of fertilizer on it, then you really don't need that much irrigation, I would assume. John?
No comments.
Jim?
No comment.
Mark? Brad, any comments, questions?
No, thank you, Ernie.
So can we have a motion on this, please?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the notice of intent 27 7th Street, map 101, parcel X3, subject to the condition that no fertilizers or chemicals be used on the property.
A second, please.
Second.
Mark seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for 41 Nons Road, pier ramp float and dredging.
They've requested a continuance to May 8th.
Okay. Can we have a motion to continue this to the 18th, please?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing for the notice of intent for 41 Road, map 5, parcel W1-19th to the meeting of May 18th, 2022.
And we have a second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Brad?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. So we'll see them on the 18th then. Next item on the agenda, 44 Salt River Lane, Mark 4 Parcel A1-B2, a deck expansion, gravel walkway, and planting.
Hi, good evening. My name is Steve Boland from Sandal Customs. We are the general contractor that is doing the deck expansion. So I think there's a couple of components to this particular application. One is the 27 square foot expansion to the pre-existing deck off the master bedroom. In hand with that, the owner of the property, Mr. Bonica, extended a gravel walkway, which you can see delineated in blue. Now that walkway within the timbers that in the two edges is a pervious bluestone. Second piece of this is if you look up by the driveway, you'll see 225 square foot area where there is now shallow driveway that the owner was contemplating putting in native grass and removing those ponds. On meeting with conservation, when we discussed with conservation that we did want to expand that deck by 20 feet. At that point in time is when they noticed that the homeowner had expanded the walkway up the side. So based on our discussion, we were talking about 3 times mitigation based on the square footage of the outlining timbers and the expanded square footage. It was our understanding that the pervious pea stone would not be part of the consideration for mitigation. So with that being said, Mr. Bonica had previously engaged Roy to do a site plan based on his native grass replacement. So what we did is, based on recommendation of conservation, we incorporated everything into this one here. Mr. Bonica doesn't know whether he will or will not proceed on removing that shelled area and doing the native grass. However, we have provided plantings that would take care of the mitigation for the timbers as well as the 27 square foot expansion of the master bedroom deck area.
Okay, thank you very much. Amy, do you have comments on this?
Sure. So I have to check the notice of intent. I'm not sure if you technically requested a variance in writing, which you are required to do. Sorry, I didn't catch that sooner. That's not something, I mean, we can catch up to that. So any new structure within the 50-foot no disturb zone requires a variance. And I can go through your file more for that. However, that being said, I do think that this would be worthy of a variance if we can nail down the planting, the mitigation planting for it. What you're requesting to do with your minor expansion to the deck, previously you had a 4x14 deck there, and you're proposing a 5x17 plus a couple of steps. That's a net gain of about 42 square feet. It's not much. There was a pre-existing kind of walkway down the slope near there, but it just wasn't retained in any way. So it's up to the commission's interpretation of whether you consider those low timbers that basically contain the stone to be stronger or not. I think without them, you'd have more disturbance. So I would be able to recommend approval of those structures if we can kind of mitigation. In the area that you're proposing 5 white spruce, that area is somewhat vegetated anyway. It seems like that is less mitigation and more for screening from the neighbor. That being said, I could be fitting 3 eastern red cedars in there, which are less of an ornamental planting. And that would enhance that area. Also, the couple of plantings in between your deck and your walkway, plantings there, again, they don't directly improve the resource area, thus wouldn't be mitigation in my mind. It's okay if you want to do them, I just wouldn't count them as mitigation. I would like to see more of a row of plantings on the seaward side of the deck where you currently have some vacant space near your planters to be used as mitigation planting. As well as there is room as you go down the walkway towards your dock on the opposite side of the walkway from where you're proposing mitigation plantings. Room on the slope, and that slope is fairly unstable. That could benefit from some native plantings as well. And if Steve, Mr. Bonica, if this was more amenable to, I know you had talked, unsure about getting rid of the shell grass. We briefly talked on site about what the future might be to that garden area, which is just off the shell driveway. When Mr. Bonica bought the property in 2019, this was kind of the condition that it was in. There was a garden there. And by garden, it's kind of a sparse, there's a couple of plants in a fairly large area. So in my mind, the mitigation would be appropriate there to fill that in. And it's a small enough area and it's a small enough expansion that you're doing that, I mean, I'm comfortable with picking out some plantings and working with the owner if they're amenable to do that. So I think with some with some alterations to the planting plan, I could recommend approval of the project. It was noticed on site that the coastal bank, it looks like it had been cut back maybe a few years ago. I don't know if that was you or the previous owner, but I'd be happy to, because you did buy it in 2019. Those plants look like they're maybe a couple years old. So I'd be happy to chat about, future management of that area with you as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to start with Brad. Any comments or questions on this?
No, right now, I think I agree with Amy's analysis, but I do want to I'm looking it over further, so if I can have a chance at the end. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Wayne?
No.
No? John?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you're saying. It would make more sense to me, like Amy was saying, to fill in that planting area or garden that's on the slope than just planting a little patch of grass where shells are at the edge of the driveway.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree with Amy's analysis, and I'm thinking that maybe the best way to proceed would be to continue to the meeting on May 4th to give Amy and the applicant a chance to review mitigation suggestions and come back to us with the revised mitigation.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Also agree with Amy's outlook on the whole thing, and I would be in support of Amy working with the applicant to work out the details of any additional planting.
I think that what we're presented with is sort of a moving target. You know, it's a question of whether that shell area is going to be replanted. A lot of the comments I've heard about the plantings that have already been recommended here aren't really mitigation from the Conservation Administrator's perspective, and I agree that that garden area, I think that could use some plantings that'll help stabilize the slope that's there right now, if it's intended to just sort of natural as it stands right now. I guess I'm a little disappointed to have seen the put along the walkway without a permit. Those are within the 50. They are considered a new structure within the 50. And I agree 100% that it does stabilize the walkway that's there, and I imagine the stones would be all over the place without the timbers, but it's a fairly easy thing to do to just get a permission to install those timbers and make sure that they're done properly. But nonetheless, it's disappointing that was done without permission. And with that, I'm going to turn back to Brad.
Yeah, thanks, Ernie. No, I agree with Jim's thoughts that, you know, we should see the full plan after they with Amy. So I think it should be continued to the next meeting.
Okay, good. Well, to that end, then, can we have a motion?
Wait 1 second.
Yes.
Just want to check with the applicant. Do you have any questions or comments based on what we've said here tonight?
As I said, the application from our perspective as general contractor is only to do with the master deck, and the homeowner expanding the walkway really has no chance to sand dollars work. Does the piece of, you know, potentially removing some shelled area with some grasses. Now, you know, the only reason that the grass area is even being talked about is because at the last time we were on site, Monica, myself, you know, you had said that we should just put it all on the table now in one meeting. So I understand where your position, you know, Mr. I could put in some pieces that he should have permitted initially. And, you know, obviously I cannot speak for him. However, you know, I'm fine continuing this hearing and doing another site visit to see that if we can, you know, get to a plan visit that will be acceptable.
Yeah, I just didn't view the conversion of shell to grass as mitigation. If he wants to do it, it absolutely should be on the plan within the life of this permit. It just wouldn't be considered any mitigation. And the mitigation is tied in directly to the changes that you want to make to the deck. So we have to do it all together. so we would need a revised, and I'm happy to come out there again and take a look at where would be, you know, more appropriate areas for plantings. We just got some revisions today for these plans, so.
One other follow-up question too. So you mentioned there's a 42 square foot increase in coverage. Is that just the deck, or does that also include the landscape timbers on the walkway?
It's just a deck.
Just the deck. So the landscape timbers should be included in this calculation.
Yep, so if Sand Dollar or somebody could come up with the square footage of the timbers that were installed, that would be helpful, so we can help plan for mitigation for everything.
Yeah, because you have a 3-to-1 and a 2-to-1.
Just a quick question on the timbers. Is that just the linear footage within the 50-foot buffer?
Well, yeah, I mean, however long and however wide they are, to come up with the square footage.
Yeah, because they're essentially 5.5 inches square, so if you put two side by side, you essentially have 1 square foot per linear foot.
Yep, so we would just need, we would need to know the additional square footage to, we can talk about that.
And you'd have to calculate it based on the square footage in the 0 to 50 as well as the 50 separately.
Okay, that was the question I was asking.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like we're doing a continuance.
Yeah, May 4th is fine.
May 4th?
Might as well.
Pile on, right? All right, can we have a motion, please?
Sure. I'll move that we continue the hearing on the notice of intent for 4 Salt River Lane, parcel 4, or map 4, I'm sorry, parcel A1-B2 until our meeting on May 4th, 2022.
Thank you, Jim. Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Brad?
Aye.
Good, thank you. Motion passes, so we'll see you again on May 4th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for 14th for a seasonal dock, map 101, parcel R3.
Thank you. Oh, the difference. Thank you very much.
That's revised.
Perfect.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Farrell from Delineation Associates. To my right is the owner, Bill Gibson. As stated, the property is located at 14 Bottom Road, with frontage on Long Pond. Property is served as an existing single-family dwelling, approximately 21,000 square feet of land, and an existing seasonal dock and ramp at Long Pond. So the proposal is to permit and install a new seasonal dock in the same basic location as the existing. The new dock will consist of a 12 by 3 foot ramp and 7 10 by 4 dock sections extending approximately 54 feet into the pond. The dock will be prefabricated aluminum finished with wood slats and supported by approximately 18 10 by 10 pallets. We located the water elevation several times at the property, and we used the relocation design, so we have 3 foot of depth at the end of the proposed dock. And as I said, that was the case. Time to have the property. We have the waterway design. I have a signed plan from them. The harbor master looked at the property and didn't have any issues and used the waterway. Upon local approval, we'll be filing also for a Chapter 91 license for it. And with that, I'll open up to questions from the commission.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have comments?
So this is a pre-existing dock that had never been permitted before, so they're looking to rectify that and get on board with everything there. They also enlargen it a little bit by creating an L at the end. Good to know that you made it through waterways tonight. Typically, if it was, you know, saltwater dock, where there's more, little bit more things in play, like salt marsh and shellfish and things like that. We typically want to wait until we actually had something other than just a plan in writing, but I don't think we need to wait for that for this. John had told me he didn't think there was going to be any issue. So the dock meets our standards for docks on fresh water. It's currently being seasonally stored on their permitted landing, and it is secure. However, if you're looking at the water, Mr. Gibson, to the right of your dock, are those the supports on the ground for your dock?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the future, those will have to be stored either on top of the dock, on top, up above the land.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that should
Yeah. But in the
work.
future.
They're a lot lighter than those things.
Yes, they will be. So those supports will need to be removed. And so will what is a float or a raft or something that you pull behind the boat there?
Yeah, my dog has seizures, so he swims all the time,
Yeah.
so I keep it there just in case.
Yeah. But if it can be stored somehow on top of something and not on the vegetation on the bank, that would meet our standards. We've let a couple other people on Long Pond or on ponds that have steep slopes where they have an existing permitted landing such as yours to keep things tied down to the landing. So that even though it's within the 0 to 50, the commission we can discuss that. But that's really all I have. These are gonna be big feet pads.
10-inch by 10-inch pads?
Yep. Okay. You have half an inch for the deck boards, not to be too nitpicky, but we're this coming town meeting, we're hoping to get to 3/4 inch, just for a little extra light penetration for vegetation and things on the bottom, if you wouldn't be opposed to 3/4 inch spacing on the deck.
I don't even know if, sometimes those decks are, perforated, so I don't know if that helps.
Oh, so you might do grading instead, we call it?
We'll see, I
Okay.
haven't picked that out yet, so.
All right, so we can put that in the condition too, that it would be grading or hopefully on the boards if you're gonna go with that. Aluminum's gonna be much lighter.
I'll probably just go sit with the oats instead.
With that, I don't have any questions. I would recommend approval of the project.
Okay, good. Terrific. Wayne, comments, questions?
No comment.
Alan?
No comments.
John?
My only comment is that I think it was at 13 Sequatum that I saw a fair amount of cutting. Is that right? Do you remember that, Amy? On their cherry and.
Oh, a couple older cuts, yeah.
So that just,
On the banking, yes.
we should condition that no further pruning of shrubs on the bank.
I think we talked to you about that, the one on the bench.
Yeah. There's a couple other, maybe it was done previously or what, things have been nipped, but future cutting, should, and we'll put it in there, should come in front of us. Nothing's in your view in the near future, because your view's you're pretty up high, but, yeah, we can certainly condition
I
that
just
any.
try to trim it down so I can see, the kids on the dock, that's pretty much it, that's all the stuff in,
Yeah, technically you should be asking to make sure we're pruning it properly, doing lateral pruning and not just giving things hedge trims.
Whatever I
'Cause-
can reach from the landing, I'm not
okay.
going down, there's all poison ivy.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, I had a question. Did you say that you're awaiting a Chapter 91 license for this?
Once we have local approval, we'll file for the Chapter 91.
They can't get that yet until they go to us first. They have to get us
They have to
first.
go to us first. Okay, that was my question.
Yep.
Okay.
We could have, but if for some configuration change, we'd have to refile, so it's generally how it's done. Is we
Yeah.
get the local approval, and then we'll go file for the Chapter 91 license.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all I have.
No remarks.
Brad, any comments, questions?
No comments.
Okay. I have none. I think whatever you put in looks like it'll be an improvement over what's there right now, so that's fine. Yeah, I think that grading is probably preferable. I know a lot of the pre-made dock slats is half, but, so if you can go with the grading, that might be preferable for
A lot of
you
people like
too.
it.
But, yeah, I'm fine with it. I have no other comments. Have a motion, please?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the notice of intent 14 for Quantum Road Map 101 Parcel R3.
Second, please.
Second.
Mark seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Good luck. Good luck.
Mr. Chair, can we go a little bit out of order to get Mr. Callahan in front of us? Thank you. It's helpful. Thanks. So this is Great Sand Lakes. And they would like an extension. Well, you're welcome to. Just trying to be nice.
Arrived and the last to leave. Oh, Mr. Gibson? Yeah, I think he dropped his mask.
Thank you very much. I'm Dave Callahan. I'm president of the Great Sand Lakes Association. Here to ask for an extension on the sand permit that was originally issued in 2007. At the time, it had a 10-year period and set up. And if you look at the actual document, it was originally proposed at 3 years, and the order of conditions crossed it out and made it a 10-year. Great Sand Lakes has got 4 beaches that we use primarily. The permit actually covers about another 6 or 7 that we don't maintain. We don't, even though they're in. We find that it's easier to just, if we can, renew it rather than go back and modify this thing for beaches we don't use. So we're really interested in, well, in 2017, we did ask for renewal on it. They gave us 5 years, another 5 years. This 5 years is now expiring. And I've requested it be a little bit longer than 5 years. Historically, looking at our archives, it's about every 7 years we put down sand. So we put sand last year. Could we have gone a couple more years? Possibly. But the risk was our permit was going to expire. We weren't going to do anything. We didn't want to get caught in that situation because we normally put the sand down in May for the start of the season. Most of the sand is, and I live across the street from the main beach in the area we call Association Beach on Clearwater Drive. And we face the north. That sand blows up into my driveway, into my lawn, into, you know, it's a, I'm out there shoveling at least 2 or 3 times a year to pick up sand and at least put it back into the parking lot area that's there. The other beach that has a lot is Vacation Lane because it's, we've had a lot of erosion problems on the upper part coming down to that area. And we have worked to build retaining walls and drainage systems and so on and so forth, and all permitted through conservation, to try and reduce the amount of washout. That doesn't mean that there's not washout from time to time. I don't know if you've been following what's happening with the CWMP review, but they're looking at the road drainage systems. They got permission from the selectmen last week. And last fall, there was a wash to the west side of that because the catch basin that's there overflowed. So CWMP is looking into that issue. That is probably about the worst place that we have right now of you know, erosion causing the sand to go down. So we're just looking to have it extended again. We try to be the best stewards we can of the properties. And yet it's, you know, as they say, we've got 4 beaches and 3 of the 4 are pretty reasonably heavily used, particularly the one across the street from my house. And I'll leave it at that. Are there any questions?
Any comments?
Um, the Great Sand Lakes Association should be an example about how to communicate with the Conservation Commission and Conservation Agent. Dave and his predecessor go above and beyond with making sure everything that they do is okay and makes sense and is applicable, and they have. So, and they help us make sure other people on the are doing things the right way too, because they care about the pond, the water quality, the vegetation, all that stuff too. So, thank you.
Welcome.
And they only do what's really necessary, what's kind of necessary, what is necessary. They don't nourish their beaches every year. When they do nourish the beaches, it's to top dress, essentially. It's not putting a ton of sand down there, it's just covering up the top. They, you know, push the sand back where they can, the sand that blows up, and reuse that. So, I don't know where the 10 years came from, but that is, technically, you really shouldn't be given extensions for more than 3 years at a time. The state act frowns upon that, but they didn't raise any eyebrows when we've done it here for you, and we've also, and I think there's some precedent. We have a few other permits that we've issued 5 extension permits for, which are maintenance type permits such as this. So I wouldn't be opposed to a 5-year, which is what we have. Sorry that that's not, you know, you want more, but we also like to keep it fairly short because we want this time to check in with you and how things are going. Things have always gone very well at Great Sand Lakes, so I would recommend we could do a 5-year for this.
Good. Questions? Start with Wayne?
No.
You're good? Alan?
I understand, I think your management is good. And not to go against what Amy's saying, but extended it to 5 years. What is a typical permit on an RDA? 3 years? And that's consistent across the board, correct?
For an RDA.
And this was a notice of...
This was a notice of intent.
Okay.
RDAs cannot be extended.
They have
When
to
you're
be-
dealing with maintenance, we usually always recommend you go to do a notice of intent because it allows you to extend.
Just want the clarification.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Jim?
No comment.
Mark, any questions?
No remarks, thank you.
Brad, anything?
Yeah, I guess, you know, my concern is I've just seen problems occur at times with extensions, and so I don't favor going beyond the 3 years. I recognize this association has done a good job. I've been here for the previous, but I really don't favor going beyond 3. I think that's really kind of by the books, and I recommend that in this case.
Thank you. I guess I too am more in favor of a 3-year extension, if that's the norm on this. And again, I like having people come back and just give us an update on, you know, you mentioned erosion problems and all that sort of thing going on down there. So I think my preference would be the 3 years.
My concern with that is that the board changes over time. And that would put pressure on us then to start putting sand on, under the fear that there's a risk that we might not get another extension. And I'm just, you know, that's one of the reasons I was asking for something longer. I don't want to put sand down there. You're correct in the sense that I may not always be the one that's in charge and managing it. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, but I think the overall, the direction that the board has been providing for a number of years is to do it only when we have to. It's expensive. We don't really want to do it at all.
Yeah.
You know,
So in the next 3 years, how many times do you think you'd re-nourish them?
0.
0.
I really don't. I don't see it. We just put sand on last year. Sand is blowing around not too bad this year, so you know there's plenty there right now. It's not, as I say, historically it's been 5 to 7 years, let's say. because we've been putting down sand, for, as far as our archives are concerned, I've seen records for financial records, but I only have the amount of sand and so forth that's put on since about 2000. It was 2000, it was 2007, a little bit put down in 14, 15. We put down some in 17 because we thought the permit was back up for renewal. We didn't know whether we would. We did get it. We put it down last year because we didn't know whether we would get it this time.
Yeah. Please.
My thought about this is that since they've been such good stewards, that we have reason to, the reason to limit the length of the permit, the renewal, is that they're going to abuse the privilege somehow or another. My thought is we have no reason to expect that, and we always have the option. The Conservation Commission has the option in the future to shut it down, to even deny the next request for an extension if the permit is abused. But we have no reason to think it's going to be abused, so I'm in favor of just going with the 5 years anyway, not.
During that 5 years, if you do re-nourish, you'd notify Amy?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we always have a chat about it before it happens.
Okay, and then she could report back to us on the conditions and that sort of a
We
thing.
have no problem.
I'm there often. I'm in Great Sand Lakes often.
All right,
We
with
have
that,
we have her out for weed
need to
control and
Take
everything
another
else.
paddle soon.
Yeah, so.
and association luncheons and all that kind of stuff.
No,
right?
nothing so fun, but
Well, we've been
paddle.
back, haven't we?
I know, I never can go.
No.
Yeah,
No,
I-
we
I
paddle
get
around the
persuaded.
pond
I think
together.
5 years is probably appropriate, given the oversight that we would have on it too, so. With that, anyone care to make a motion?
Okay, I'll move that we grant an extension for a period of 5 years to the Great Sand Lake Association for beaches located at map 63, parcel BA-C, map 72, parcels BA/A and BA-B2 and BA/B1 and map 73, parcels BA-H and BA-D and BA-K, SF.32-1889 for beach management.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Brad?
I'm an A.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Back to the
Order
normal.
of conditions for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2-0.
So this was, when I was out last year on surgery, this got permitted to change from the synthetic, or to change from grass lawn to synthetic turf at the, and the paperwork was never signed. So I need to have a chance to draft the new order for you at this time. So we can do this at the next time.
So we don't have it.
No, I
So we
didn't,
should pass on this. is
we
what
should
you're-
put, I'm gonna put this on the next agenda.
Okay, all right.
You
fine.
did approve of it, language for the order,
Okay.
ready
fine.
for you. I had
We
hoped.
don't need to make a motion or anything like that.
No,
Okay.
May 4th.
Good. So the next item is a request for an extension for 55 Snow Inn Road, map 15, parcel N 3-0 with dock and dredging.
Not sure, I don't think anybody's present for this one, I can speak to it. This was, 3 years ago, we permitted an overwash bulkhead, dredging, and reconstruction of the dock. The overwash bulkhead has been built and the dredging has been done. The owner still needs to install the cap on the wall, install the float, and put the structural supports on the last 4 pilings. They would like a 3-year extension if the dredging needs to be done again will be covered in that time, but they do anticipate that the remainder of the structural work that I mentioned would be done this spring or summer.
Okay, so is this unusual? I mean, we've granted permission to do the dredging, initial dredging, put in the float, all the stuff that they initially requested. Now they're coming back. Here, they don't have to refile for more dredging.
Correct.
That seems,
Typically, we authorize a one-time 3-year extension for dredging.
okay.
That's been, and then after that, we like to see them come and file again, because conditions might have changed out there.
So it's just the maintenance dredging?
Yeah,
around
I mean, technically, the permit expires like very soon. So he wouldn't have time under his current permit to finish the structural work either.
Yeah,
So he does need at least,
Oh.
he needs at least 1 year.
all right.
But he's asking for 3, in the thought that he might do a maintenance dredge.
Okay. Let me just ask if anyone has any comments, concerns. John?
I have a question, which is, remind me exactly where this is. Is this the spot right on the north end of the,
Halfway down Snow Inn Road. So it's next, it's the little, Mr. Skipper rebuilt what was a shed pretty much down on the beach. And he rebuilt it, and it's same footprint. It's a small shed, but it's level with the road now. And he has a commercial dock here. He operates his business off here. So it's halfway down as you're driving down Snow Inn Road on the left. Right before, it's before the new house that's going, or the tear down rebuild that's happening right now. Out there.
okay, and why, I mean, why are they concerned about additional dredging? It's,
They're hoping not to, because we do have an overwash bulkhead which prevents some siltation. Sediments do move around the harbor. So he wants to make sure he maintains the depth for his barge.
so he has a barge that comes in right up against the bulkhead there.
He does.
I see.
He has a float that he brings the barge up to, doesn't he? Does he put
You can do
against the
both.
bulkhead?
Let me look at the plan, hold on. Just reach back in the memory. Nope, he dredges right up to the edge of the bulkhead.
Oh, all right.
I can send this around if people want to see it.
What was that?
Does anybody want to see this?
I don't need to see it. That was my question.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. Just for clarification, he expects to have all the construction done this spring?
Yes.
Okay,
Spring,
and the
summer.
only reason for the 3-year extension is because he may or may not need to do additional dredging.
Correct.
Well, my thought would be that we grant an extension for 1 year so that he can finish the construction. And if he needs to do additional dredging, then he can come back to us. But I have some concerns about granting an extension for something that we don't even know whether it's gonna happen.
I understand. It's kind of like the sand, but underwater.
You've mentioned that in the past we've done this with 3-year extension?
A one-time,
One time?
3-year.
Well, we set a precedent, let's do 3 years.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I'm opposed to that.
Brad, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I agree with Jim. I think this is highly unusual, this one-time dredging project with the overwash bulkhead. I don't know why we would authorize potential dredging in the future for this site. If you folks have been down there, the dredging was completed. It's a deep pocket there now. I would think the applicant would need to come in and demonstrate to us why he needs to dredge. So I do think it's unusual to separate the construction that hasn't been completed from the dredging. And I think you folks should get down there and take a look at it. You know, the overwash bulkhead was a little bit controversial, and we were told that the dredging was needed and the overwash bulkhead would protect that dredge footprint. And, you know, it seems like it has, but the salt marsh landward of the overwash bulkhead has degraded, which is something we were told that wouldn't happen. So to me, this site is a site that folks are acquainted with what's happened there. And I don't know why this wouldn't be a 1 or 2 year extension to finish the construction. And if dredging needs to be done, then the applicant needs to come back and demonstrate why it needs to be done.
A couple of comments on that, Brad. With respect to the salt marsh, if I remember correctly, they were supposed to restore that entire bank of salt marsh as part of the project.
So that was this one.
I thought that's what they had agreed to.
There was some planting, but what I remember is kind of a, you know, a pledge that the overwash bulkhead would not degrade the salt marsh up from it, but that hasn't been the case.
I think, so, I think you would grant him the 1 year and give him the opportunity to come here and talk to you. He's out, I talked to him the other day, he's a merchant marine, so he's out to sea right now.
Okay.
And if he wants to come and make an argument for future dredging, he can do that, but, I mean, I seem like there's a mix in
When
the.
does it expire?
Expires beginning of May.
So, can we wait?
We will not have another meeting before this expires.
Yeah. So we kind of have to act tonight on this.
And give him a year and then have him come in sometime and then within the next year and discuss it with you.
Well, and my other question is, so there's going to be dredging up in the northern corner of that shoreline for that new dock that we've approved coming out. How will that impact his area?
Shouldn't impact him at all. He's several properties away.
So there won't be any sediment flow down
Minimal.
to where he is?
No, minimum. During the actual construction of that, there shouldn't be anything because there's going to be silt curtains and booms up. But as far as flow to the low area, I don't think it's going to happen.
They're going to be dredging upstream or up.
Yeah.
Is all anoxic mud.
Yeah, they have to curtain that off when they do it. I think anything that they dig there, it's gonna, if the sides would cave in on themselves rather than flowing out. I don't think if it was directly adjacent, I would think maybe, but
yeah,
it's a few properties over.
All right, so what I hear, sort of the preference is to go with 1 year tonight, and then have Skipper come in and give his arguments for, and as part of that too, I'd like to ask him to refresh us on the salt marsh situation there.
I'm not seeing, and I gotta remind myself, but this one, we saw a couple at the same time during this time. He does not have a plan for salt marsh. His plan does not include salt marsh restoration. What you approved is not, that's not a component of this project.
Okay.
It was, so it just says no portion of the salt marsh is to be altered with the exception of the few new pilings in that area are to be installed. But there's no, oh, I apologize. I'm very sorry, I misread this. So we need to ask if there are supposed to be marsh pillows. 1 to 2 rows of marsh pillows to be installed seaward of the existing marsh grass. My apologies.
Okay.
That is in there.
All right, so
It's not on the
we
plan,
do
it's in
need-
the order.
Brad, do you want to make a motion for this one?
Yes, and I will comment that I think it would be a good site for everyone to visit at some point, just to look at the salt marsh dynamics and the overwash bulkhead. I don't think it's really performed exactly as, we were told it was going to perform. So I think it would be, a good place for us all to visit at some point. So I would make a motion that we grant an extension of the notice of intent for 55 Snow Inn Road for 1 year.
Okay, do we have a second, please?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No?
Nay.
Nay? Mark?
No.
No, so we have 4-3, motion carried. Yeah, Brad, just for the record, you were an aye?
Yes, aye.
All right, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is request for an extension for 23 Snow Inn Road, Unit 1, Map 8, Parcel P2-1 for a patio extension and outdoor kitchen.
Mr. Dasco, who's one of the owners of the Witchmere, owns a ground floor condo towards the end of the jetty. And they have some associated upland there. A couple of years ago, they asked for a patio extension and an outdoor kitchen. They no longer wish to do the outdoor kitchen of the project. None of the work has been done. And I said to Mr. Ganshert, who's the property manager there, who's putting this forward, that I would recommend a 1-year extension for this project, which they say can be done. They can do the patio and the mitigation plantings that need to be done within the year.
So they are planning on doing the outdoor kitchen as well?
Not the kitchen, sorry, the patio.
This
They're
is
not,
this is the pizza oven place.
yes.
Yep,
So they're not proposing that. They just want the patio and they'll do the plantings.
okay,
1 year.
all right. Discussion? Questions, comments?
I just have a few questions. Amy, when did we give the approval? How many years ago?
2018.
2018.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2017. So this
20
was open under the Extension Act that was granted to permits during COVID. So it's actually been 5 years.
So it's been 5 years. Now, is the plan for the patio that they're going to continue to build the same as in the original filing?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yep.
I mean, I just have some concerns about something that's 5 years old getting an extension.
Yep.
I mean, I understand the extension during the period of the pandemic when everything was sort of on hold, but I think we're beyond that now. I just feel that we need to sort of relook at it. So I'd be opposed to giving them an extension and just asking them to come in and refile, especially since the project has changed.
Mark?
The plans are already in file, specifications are already in file. Obligated to build what is on file. I don't see a reason to put them through that again.
So
Unless they intend to make a change.
Okay, but they are making a change. They're not going to.
The kitchen was on the patio.
Right, but it's only a deletion.
Okay, I'm still opposed.
Okay. All right. Comments? Can we have a motion on this then? We put it out there then. I move we grant a 1-year extension for 23 Snow Inn Road, Unit 1, Map 8, Parcel P2-1 with a patio extension. And can we condition the removal of the kitchen in this motion?
Yep.
And elimination of the existing plans. Anybody care to second that?
I'll second it.
Wayne? All right, all in favor?
Do we have discussion, Ernie?
Yes, discussion.
Ernie, could we have just some quick discussion? I just want to go on record saying that, I support the 1 year, although I think it's important that the work is done. If they come back and they need more than 1 year, that they should refile. That's my opinion. I'd like to see in the public record.
I would agree with that. So we have a motion on the table, it's been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries. Action and possible vote, closure of gates at the Herring Run at Bell's Neck during the spawning season. This is an ongoing issue that we wrestled with every year.
Why wrestle with it? Were you talking about closing the road off completely?
No.
Not allowing people to observe the herring and stuff?
No, it's just, well, Brad, maybe you want to talk to this.
Yeah, sure. So it's something we've discussed, 3 or 4 times, and it's always been problematic because, how do you actually get, staff or volunteers to open and close the gates? The timing has been 7 in the morning until 7 o'clock at night or thereabouts. And we voted in the past several times to do this, and it's just we haven't been able to get support of town staff, be it the police or, Department of Conservation or Natural Resources. It's a lot to open the gate and close the gate every night. I'll tell you guys that a few years ago, the response was over poaching of glass eels and herring at night. And then more recently, I think it's been to just out of concerns for night activity, as well as there's an interest in opening up the herring run for harvest. There's presently a plan that I've been working with Heinz Croft with the Department of Natural Resources to review the plan, and soon the plan will go out to the Board of Selectmen for review as well. And so that could possibly mean an opening for harvest next year. And if that's the case, you certainly don't want to have the gates open in the night because people would just come in and take what they want. So really that's been the interest, illegal poaching of fish, people dumping things, illegal activity at night, and then anticipation of a potential open harvest. So I still support it. This commission has voted on it, I'm going to say 3 times in the past, but it's just been that procedural, issue of how do we get people to open and close it 7 days a week.
So what has the vote been in the previous 3 times?
Good question. It's in the record, so we'd have to go back. I don't know if we had any real objections. I'm trying to think of what the objections would be, but I think Andy could look that up if we needed to.
Well, it sounds to me like coming back each year or whatever, try to get what you want. And close it down. I mean, this is crazy. We got a beautiful spot there. I understand there's probably bad people that do bad things, but you can't shut down life because of a few bad apples. We have a lot of people that drive up in there. They love to see the heron going up through the flume. Kids, everybody. It's a wonderful thing to see nature at its finest when they're spawning to go up,
Wayne,
He's talking about at night.
It's closing.
Oh.
Not during the day.
Oh, I'm sorry then.
Okay.
I was assuming that you were talking about closing them down
No.
all the time.
No, only
No,
like
it's
No.
All right, well,
7
okay
at night
then.
until 7 in the morning or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take my diatribe back then.
So
Yeah, Wayne, if I can
You want to
if I can interrupt,
What's that?
for most of you down there, Wayne, the gates were always closed, for decades and decades. It's really very recently that they haven't been closed at night. And so, there may be some reason to not close them at night, but I'm not sure what that would be. I think it's more just the difficulty in scheduling someone to open and close the gates.
Mm-hmm. That's what it comes down to.
How would that work for emergency vehicles?
They should have there should be a Knox box on there. You can get through there
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the master key in it.
So the police
Yeah.
would be able to get in, the fire department and all that.
Yes. Yeah.
Water,
Can I make a
fire.
suggestion? There's electricity on Depot Street there, and I think we have some fun somewhere. If this becomes a real all the time, make an automated gate there. They have this technology that you can do this, And it will lock, they have this, major properties, large, rich people have these things all the time. So if it's that important to the town, then we ought to do that, because I guess the police can't do it, the fire can't do it, harbor master can't do it, none of the staff here can do it, and there's no volunteers to do it, so we have to go to automation. And I would suggest looking at that and the technology of it, or just eliminate and don't do it and trust the people, and hopefully nobody does bad things and the police can monitor it like they do in the town of Brewster, and the town of Dennis, and Yarmouth.
Well, for proposing spending money, why not pay somebody to do it 7 days a week?
Then you get more liability, more issues, somebody call out sick or something.
Yeah, we've got
Make
some
automation.
We can't fill positions right now.
Can't get help.
We,
You say there's electricity there already?
Depot Street's right there, the power and the light,
Mark,
right at the gate, right there.
In the past, I think the consensus, when we came down to discuss this in the past, that, the closing of the gates in the evening was to prevent the poaching that was being discussed and taking place. My question is that still a prevalent factor? Evidence that that's still taking place. There's a fish been swimming up down that river for a long time. They keep coming back every year, so I guess we haven't killed them all.
Yeah, if I can address that, Mark. We've had some evidence of eel poaching in years past, and there was a big sting there, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago. Involved agents with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as state environmental police and town police. That was probably 3 or 4 years ago. So I think that I'm not seeing evidence right now that it's happening. So if folks want, one thing we could consider is just wait for the harvest. If there's a harvest, you can't have the gates open at night. You'll have people come in there and just, take what they want. So, I mean, we almost had enough people, volunteers, to open and close the gates previously. We came very close to having the 7 days filled. I think if you have the harvest associated with the harvest, selling of permits, probably see direction from the Department of Natural Resources, and they'll probably want to, among their staff, make sure they can do this. So I think the solution will come. We're halfway through the season, and so maybe it's not a good idea for this year, but if the harvest is approved, I can tell you it has to be a feature that is implemented, because otherwise you'll have nothing but problems.
Yeah.
People will come in at night, and that's just what. So I don't mind if we kick this down the road till next year, but I think it's pretty important to consider it if the harvest is approved.
Brad, have you approached groups like the Cape Cod Fishing Club and the Cape Cod Salties and stuff? They all have a vested interest in seeing the survive. They might be willing to put up some volunteers to do it.
Yeah, I have discussed with the Cape Cod Salties, and they're excited about potential harvest. I think for me, that's a decision that the local herring management goes to the department. And so really how to staff that, to me, will become a decision for Heinz Croft and his staff. And so I think maybe to try to force something in the middle of April might be difficult for this year. But I think that, we can revisit this. It's kind of our decision on whether the gates are closed or not, but how to manage it will probably come along with the herring harvest management, which will be the Department of Natural Resources.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about finding a way to that if we in fact have a harvest next year.
I'd hate to table it, Brad, because we're going to be right where we are today next year, running around in circles trying to figure out how to deal with it. I'd rather try to line up a solution for next year in the time that we've got until then, than just put it on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I would propose that we look into getting a grant and put an automated gate there that can be managed by the conservation agent on an app, on an iPhone or anywhere, and you can set the time, the parameters. I'm a facilities director, and I can shut lights off in buildings right now if I wanted to from this phone. I can turn the heat on. They have the technology. Now we'll do away with this. And right here, just looking shortly, anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 is the cost. And I think that would mitigate and take care of the solution. You got the power on Depot Street, drop it right there, put a gate, done.
So, I know what gate you're talking about. I'm not a mechanic, so when a gate breaks, does that become the maintenance division of the town? Does that become that company?
Well, if you have a contract with a company
Yeah.
that can service and maintain it, that would be part of that, going forward. So the operational, they'll sell you on your computer, you put it in, you set your dates from April to June, shut from 7 PM to 7 AM, open and shut, it locks. And automatic.
Opening is fine, because I agree, we need to do something here. I just wanna make sure this is a good solution, because opening is fine, because people on the other side of the gate. Closing it at 7 o'clock, how do we know that there's not people still parked in that parking lot?
If they get
Put
some
signs
signs
up.
on the inside, if you're locked in the gate, you call the police department, and it overrides it. If you're in these premises, as you approach the gate and you see it locked, call the Harwich Police Department and we'll be there to let you out. Then you'll know
Love
who's down
that.
there. I mean, this is
Yeah.
where we're headed.
No, I
So,
understand.
I mean,
I'm
the solutions are all right here in our hands.
Do you have any of that money left of the $20,000 grant that you had mentioned before?
I will have a little bit, but I have to see if I could use it for something like this, because I probably could. I'd have to, CPC funding it's very specific.
Is it? Oh.
Yeah, so I can look into that.
Yeah.
Wasn't that specifically intended for fence?
It is intended for gates and fencing, but
I see it. Gates are certainly a part of fencing.
But they're very specific conditions, and I can't cite them off the top of my
Yeah.
head for how CPC funds can be used, so.
Well, that's.
But,
we have to look in, but we can look into that. That's not a
and
problem.
if that's an option, it's an option to apply for, it's not gonna happen for this season
No,
anyway.
but we can
So
plan.
it's very much an option. Well, no, it wouldn't even work for next year because it doesn't
Town
get-
meeting and herring and,
Town
yeah.
meeting next year. So, right, that wouldn't do for next year. Generally, that is an option.
If it's a reasonable cost, then I would say we can find the money in lieu fees or something else. I mean, the money's there.
Yeah.
Don't
and
we
the
have money for
fees.
mitigation and stuff? And maybe we can negotiate with the Cape Cod Tech. They wanna pay us a little fee for the property.
Or maybe someone wanted to harvest vines, they could use.
Sure.
Also,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
yes.
Before we start committing too much money to these types of things, I'm just wondering where we are on the Herring River study that we had talked about before, and getting the RFP out for that, and having the money to do that type of study that we've talked about.
You want to talk about that tonight, or do you want to put it on
We
the
can.
agenda?
I mean, I don't have much of an update for you. I'm
Yeah.
doing the best I can with very little resources.
No,
And I
I-
haven't put it together, and I need help.
Yeah, no, I
To put it
completely
together.
understand that, Amy. My concern is that before we commit
Yeah.
certain monies to something else,
True.
we need to figure
I
out how
understand.
much we're gonna need for that issue.
Yeah, it's a good
Right.
point. Why don't
Well, the
we-
CPC funding, it might be an option. We'll have to look into
Okay.
it. I don't have $5,000 left, but we were able to save a little bit. We've been able to do things a little differently.
But for new CPA funding, that's going to be over a year away.
Existing CPA funds that we have.
Oh, okay.
But wetlands, yes, the study, we said we would take money for the study out of that. And I don't think it's gonna cost as much as we have, but we don't know yet.
Can you put that on the agenda for the 18th, Amy?
The Herring River,
Yes.
Herring River study, okay. Yes. Okay,
Ernie, may I direct a question to Brad?
Sure.
Brad, can you hear me?
Yes.
How many years has the hearing been shut down at this, do you know?
The moratorium?
Yes, it shut down 2006.
Given the fact that it's developing good health again, this is probably a difficult question to answer, and I'm not even looking for a concrete answer. I'm looking for an educated guess. If a reasonable harvest took place, how would you expect that to impact the volume of herring there in general? Is it a marginal impact or a little heavier than that? Could you speculate at that?
Yeah, it's a good question, but it's also, something I get paid to do. It's what I do. We draft what's called sustainable fishery management plans. They have to be approved at the local level, at the state level, as well as the Interstate Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. And what you and then have some metric that will be what's considered a sustainability metric. And what I proposed, I wrote the plan for Harwich, I don't mind saying it. It's being reviewed by Heinz Prof now. And the target is 10% of the time series average of the spawning run count at the West Reservoir. So for that average count per year over the time series, we're proposing to take no more than 10%. And it's being proposed to be done with 3 opening days where the harvest is managed by the herring wardens, where every harvest is quantified when it happens. So it's a very different system. You probably recall 7 days a week or 5 days a week. I went there, for many, many years, and it was pretty wide open. You drove in, you took what you wanted to. It's going to be a very different type of thing. It'll be a river-specific sustainability target, which is 10% of the time series average. So I guess to answer your question, if you allow 90% of your fish to go upstream,
yep,
that's a completely sustainable situation for the spawning run.
Okay.
What's the time, just out of curiosity, what's the time average? Do you take the average of number of fish that you've had over the past 10 years passing through there? Or is it, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, you know what it is. It's we've got the electronic counter for 7 years.
Yep.
And then upstream at Hinckley's is a visual volunteer count.
Right.
And so what we've done is blended the 2 series, and we've actually extrapolated the Hinckley's count, and that's your running average. And every 3 years it's recalculated.
Mm-hmm.
So if it goes up, you can take more fish. If it goes down, you have to take fewer. And there's actually a shut-off period where if it hits a certain low point, you have to shut the run down. So it's much more structured.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I have no real concerns if you meet that 10% target. Very small, amount relative to what's coming up there. And again, this will have a public process in town, at the state and interstate level. So there'll be lots of time to review it. Right now, it's being reviewed by staff biologists with my agency, Division of Marine Fisheries, as well as Heinz Prof.
That's interesting, because if you can, so say, Herring River it fluctuates between 100,000 and we've had over 1 million fish there. So even using a low number of 500,000, 10% of that's 50,000 fish.
Yeah.
Just out of Herring River, that's
a lot.
That's a lot of fish. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. The average will be much lower than that, or not much, but it will be because there's been some low years.
Right.
But yeah.
You're still talking
but
tens
it's interesting.
of thousands of fish.
I'm involved with reviewing these plans all over the East Coast, and Maine often targets a 5% exploitation rate, which means they can take 85% of the run, and they feel that the 15% that escapes is enough to keep the population going. So there's very different approaches on the East Coast.
Wow.
I think a 10% harvest rate is fairly low relative to other states.
Well, I think it's a conservative, we've had a moratorium for so long, I think it's a good place to start. So, anyway, interesting.
All right, so, we'll talk again about, so for the gates,
I'll look into the CPC funds that we have and see if we could potentially use it. I'm happy to look more into the automated gates. Maybe Alan can help me with that. And then, that we would probably have to go to the select for. But we should, like you said, start it now so we can hopefully plan for this for next year.
Yeah.
do you want any volunteers to help you on the RFP for the road?
If anybody would like to help me with the RFP, I would love it.
Okay. Anybody interested?
I can help you with what an RFP should look like, all the parameters. We can draft.
Yeah, I'd be willing to help you, and I think with Brad's interest, we'll certainly run it by you, Brad, if you don't mind.
Sounds like it's right up the alley for resident lawyers over here.
I mean, I'm happy to review it. No, I'm happy to participate in it too, Amy.
I appreciate it. It's just, however well-intentioned I may be, the days just fly.
Some time in your schedule.
Yeah,
Amy,
we'll
and-
sit down for an hour to start things off and give you some parameters, okay?
Sure.
That would be so appreciated.
All right.
All right.
We move on to the next one, which is
Yeah, I hope,
Seems
I'm
like-
not sure if this individual who's still online has stayed with us for this or not, but Glendune Road.
Oh, good.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
so
Still here,
sorry.
Amy?
So sorry.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
No problem. Doing well. So, so I guess our request. My name is Chris Nitchie. I'm the acting licensed site professional for the gasoline cleanup. I would imagine you guys recall gasoline tanker truck rolled over. Let's see, approaching 3.
Yep.
On Sisson Road. At the time when the spill occurred, the 15 Glendune Road property was impacted, and this was prior to my involvement in the project. But an order of conditions was applied for and received for, I believe, both the potential excavation of soil in that area and the installation of groundwater monitoring wells.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
My understanding is that no soil was ever excavated from that property. There are existing groundwater monitoring wells that we are monitoring on most of them on a quarterly basis at this point. We plan to continue monitoring those wells, but we've reached a stage in the cleanup where it's very unlikely we would do any excavation in that area. To close out this permit at this time, but I wanted to discuss that with each of you.
So I have a couple of, so I went down to the site the other day just to look around, and I was a little surprised to see that an area with the lowest area where the contamination went, even with all the invasive species around it, on the banking, in the marsh system, seaward of it, there's not a large, but there's an area that has not repopulated with any vegetation there. And I don't know if that is a symptom of, it looks like really thick leaf litter. It's very wet. And the invasives tend to be on the sides of it and up on the slope. But I was kind of surprised that not even Phragmites, where it's adjacent, has taken over there, and I was curious as to why that might be. That was an area that was supposed to be planted. It wasn't, because we were trying to get the contamination in check at that point. But if you're saying the contamination is, at minimal levels now, I'm a little, I just don't know why that area wouldn't naturally have populated with invasives when it's chock-a-block full all around it.
So I guess unfortunately, I don't have the advantage of having seen the area prior to the release.
Mm-hmm.
So, my current understanding is that the area is similar now to what it was prior to the release, but you guys would know better than I would. what it looked like
Not
prior
this
to? Were
particular
Phragmites
property.
removed from that area?
So in order to but to this area, there was some removal done, but not in
Okay.
this area on Glen Dune. And I can't, to be honest, I can't speak to what it looked like prior to the release. This property is not one that I visit at all regularly.
It's kind of hard to get to, yeah.
It's kind of hard to get to. They haven't had to file with us for things previously, so we don't have a record of what it looked like previously. I'm not saying I'd.
So that would be my first.
Go ahead.
So that would be my first question: is whether those native plantings existed prior to the release.
Right.
I can only go on what I have in the records from the previous contractor, but I don't have records of any soil having been removed from that area. So I'm sure the area was fairly trampled, using pads and booms to soak up any oil that was there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there were pads there.
Yeah, even any plantings and detritus that were removed, anything that got oil should have been a load of solids went out from that area, and I don't have records of that, so I can only assume that that nothing was, no soil, no plants, nothing was removed from that area.
After the release, I was down there pretty often, and during the cleanup with
Good.
the previous remediation contractor, I was out there pretty regularly. I don't recall this area where there's no vegetation now. I don't recall that area being excavated. So I don't know if it's just nothing wants to grow there. I don't know. It's not a big area. I don't think there's a down this area. So I'm not saying we should go plant it, but
Should we have that soil tested to see if there's hydrocarbons in it?
well, they've been testing, so
Have
he
they
can
regularly? Yeah.
talk. Yeah.
And I will say, we've been testing primarily groundwater. We do not have a substantial number of soil samples. In general, with a gasoline release, if you're not seeing and you're not seeing evidence within the water that there's petroleum impacts there, then the petroleum impacts are typically quite minor. We don't, and the groundwater concentrations for monitoring wells that are several feet from that area are approaching, most have achieved, but some are just approaching the drinking water standards. So have a lot of soil data, but we have an awful lot of evidence that there's not any soil contamination. Certainly nothing that would be impacting plantings. It would take a much higher concentration of petroleum products to be impacting that. I would say, if anything, it's to be downed, leaflet, things that just need to be cleared out of the way.
Would it be worthwhile, if we're talking about closing out this permit in the future, we want to make sure it's right. Because the sediment there is very silty, there's even some peat in that area, maybe the commission would consider doing soil samples in there.
I think we should.
Or having,
Just
well,
to-
not us,
with them,
the contractor do it, because it's their responsibility to make sure.
Just to make sure.
I would expect.
What's it called, a 22E? Is that what that is, a cleanup?
Yeah, 21E.
But if the vegetation is not growing,
I would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting or agreeing to close the thing out without
knowing for sure.
whether or not this soil or the groundwater is contaminated. And I'd like, if there are numbers, I'd like to see the numbers. We don't have.
We
any
have,
report.
I'll give you their quarterly reports they send to me for their groundwater. I can send those to you.
But I think we need to,
But-
as Wayne is suggesting, that surface soil get.
I agree.
And tested and.
Before we can sign off on it.
Will gasoline vapors migrate up through the soil? From say there was gasoline on the water, at the water table level, will that go up through the soil?
Yes. Vapor intrusion into buildings and homes is one of the primary concerns with a release like this.
Okay.
Yep.
That's one of the most that we look at when cleaning up a gasoline spill. And what we are held to are the state standards, the Massachusetts which is in terms of defining what standards we need to meet, what the standards are for soil that we can leave behind, for groundwater that we can leave behind, and how clean these things need to be.
So do you think it's possible if there was gasoline laying on top of the water table, that through this period of time, it could have migrated up into eventually coming out into the atmosphere, and it's no longer in the water? That's why your results are showing minimal amounts in the water? Is that possible? I don't know. I'm not a scientist, I don't know.
So, yeah, the gasoline, and really with gasolines and with petroleums, they do degrade readily in the environment. And they degrade both by, they're volatile compounds, they evaporate into the air, and they also degrade biologically, they degrade in the presence of oxygen. Being on the Cape, we're fortunate to have a nice sandy aquifer. There's a lot of oxygen in the groundwater. That helps to naturally degrade the petroleum compounds.
Okay.
So we have a lot of advantages out here. Degradation of the gasoline products, and the data that we have available shows that that's occurring. It's occurring nicely. We're not all the way there yet. Completely clean. There's still a plume, but we're making good progress. Or Mother Nature is really making good progress at this point because we're really not actively remediating at this point. We are monitoring.
Right.
So I have a question about when the original spill occurred, were there samples taken and analyzed of the of what was spilled? Was there an uncontaminated sample of the gasoline was spilled? Do we know that there weren't other contaminants in the spilled gasoline other than what one would expect to be gasoline being transported for filling station use? Do we actually know what was there? Do we know that the contaminants might have a longer half-life in the soil and be causing other problems?
What contaminants are you thinking of?
I'm not thinking of any particular contaminants. I'm not knowledgeable about gasoline. But do we know what was actually spilled? Did it have anything that one wouldn't expect to be in gasoline? Could there have been a contaminant in the gasoline that is causing problems in the soil? That's my question. Do we know that that's not a possibility?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a difficult question to answer. A little bit difficult to prove that there's a whole universe of potential contaminants out there.
Well,
we would have to have an idea of what we were sampling for in order to sample for it.
My original
And we would have to identify something.
My original question was, was there analysis done of the gasoline that was spilled? Some off the top, so it's actually known what was in the spill.
I have some. I just have to go through it. Okay. I have a lot of the initial samplings that was done to determine the means of remediation, environmental at the time. I mean, you might have it too, but it's not something I know right off the top of my head. But
So, sounds like it's in order.
Just that one location that Amy's identified?
Yeah.
Is it worth
And so I can't, if you guys are requesting a soil test, I can't commit to that at this juncture. I can't speak on behalf of the insurance company, but I don't imagine that would be an issue to collect some soil samples there.
Okay.
So you get back to Amy once you check with them?
I can, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other issues?
Question.
Mark, yeah.
Is it worth the effort to look at that site a little more in-depth in a little broader area to see if there's any telltale issues? If they're going to do soil sampling anyway, do we want to direct them to go a little further perhaps? I don't know if there's any other indicators.
Well, we'd have to, I mean, in order for us to, we'd have to have some clear and convincing, you know, at least evidence that there's, so the lack of vegetation where there should be vegetation, because everywhere else is invasives, it was an indicator to me that maybe it's not this, maybe it is natural conditions, maybe it's something else that's happening. But there was an indication to me that something might be a little askew there. But minus that, we can't require them to go above and beyond their order or above and beyond their federal, you know, requirements. But if we were to look, if you wanted to take a look out there and see if, I'm not an expert in gasoline spills.
Is this the dirt road behind Jake's Restaurant? Runs down around
Yes.
the marsh out there?
No,
Dead ends.
no.
It does go, if you go behind Jake's
Yeah.
and keep going
Yeah.
It does
east.
come out on that?
It does.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
But the easy access is if you go into Cape Life Gifts, it's that thing at the
Yeah.
end of Sisson Road, just facing there, you go to the right of the building, you walk right
Yeah.
back there.
Oh, is that
It's
right?
there.
Yeah.
It's there, but to better access the spot where I saw the no vegetation, it's at 15 Glendune, which you can get off Lower County.
Take a ride down, but
Yeah, it's, I mean, there's trash and other debris that have nothing to do with this. And it's not a big area, but I think it's, and I'd be happy to speak with whoever about at least starting a soil, like, seeing what we can do for a soil test down there, just to give us some assurances. Ground is great, but soils would be helpful.
Well, Chris, thank you for sticking it out with us. So you'll get back to Amy on what you find as far as the approval to go ahead with the soil sample. Make arrangements with her to conduct that.
I will. And Amy, I'll probably want to either meet you out there or have someone meet you out there just to make sure that we're discussing the same area. I don't want to go out there and sample the same area.
Happy to do that.
One question that or one sort of explanation that I can provide. Typically, with a gasoline spill, we have a field screening instrument, which I imagine was present at the time of the release. And field screening is the quickest and cheapest way to determine whether there's residual gasoline impacts within soil. So I would imagine we would come out and several samples. We would maybe screen a half a dozen samples from areas. And the screening can give us an idea of which area is most appropriate to send to a laboratory. So we might only submit a single sample to the laboratory, which would be a sample that has the highest screening value based on our screening. I guess I just wanted to explain that so that way we keep expectations realistic. You know, we'd probably be looking at, you know, maybe one set of laboratory, one laboratory sample from this area, as well as some professional screening to identify the area that's most appropriate to sample.
Okay.
Sounds reasonable. Good.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you again for attending the meeting, and we'll look forward to the next input from you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, last thing on the agenda we have is minutes. There were 7 listed. There are only 4 that were in Dropbox.
There's 4.
There's 3 more that Melissa's been able to wrap up, so
Yeah, they'll be on the next time.
hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at them before tonight's meeting.
I haven't, but I'm sorry. I have not. I have not either.
I've got changes on all 4 sets. Do you want to go through them individually, or do you want to just accept my changes and make a motion to
any of your substantive that we should talk about, or are they
No.
more grammatical?
No, they're more grammatical.
I trust you, Ernie.
If they're not substantive, that's fine.
We all trust you, Ernie.
It might be misplaced, but.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I have a question. Of the 7 that are mentioned here?
Yeah.
Is there more backlog, or is that the end of the backlog?
We're not quite at the end. We're almost, we can see the end.
Like a freight train coming down.
Melissa's really excited to only have to do one set of minutes every 2 weeks.
Yep, pass it.
So if you're going to approve them, if they're just
They're all grammatical.
grammatical, then you can make a motion to do that. If you want more time, take it.
I'll
We've had
make
these
a
couple-
motion, we accept them minutes.
Which date? You gotta put them
The,
on.
Oh, you gotta put dates
yes.
on them? I don't have
May
the dates.
5th, 2021,
2021,
December 1st, 2021,
December 1st,
December 5th, 2021,
December 15th,
and February 2nd, 2022.
February 2nd, 2022.
Second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Thank you. Good. I think we're done.
I got one quick announcement. So, well, 2 quick announcements. AmeriCorps, myself and Melissa cleaned out Robbins Pond Conservation Area pretty thoroughly. AmeriCorps members went in the ditches underneath the old pump house, pulled out a bunch of tires, a grill, pieces of a couch, all kinds of things. We waded into the water near shore and pulled out the trash from there, hauled all the trash up to the road and left it for DPW to get. Been post and rail fences installed not to prevent access to the street, but to prevent access to where people should not be going. And trees have been felled to further dissuade illegal activities.
I didn't see a lot of negative social media on that. You know, I know you mentioned it, but I saw 1 or 2, that was it.
I went up, took a look at it, looked good, actually.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Trying. Next Saturday, 30th, right? That's next Saturday, 2 from now. The 6th or 7th annual Harwich Trash Community Cleanup is happening. That is where the Conservation Department and the Trust partner together and do a town-wide cleanup. And we usually have about 100 volunteers. We'd love to see some of you there. You can sign up on the Harwich Conservation Trust website, and you can pick out your roads that you want to do. And it's in general a good day. So,
I would like to help, but this time of the year, it's farmers.
I get you.
Our chores are a little bit more
I'm
important.
putting it out for you, and I'm putting it out for the public who might be watching in the future. That's all I got.
All right.
Can we have a motion to adjourn?
I would move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Oh, you.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, good night, folks.
Okay, good night.
Aye.